before we get into today's reaction, I did want to take a second to make a few relevant disclosures because already this is going to be one of those that is going to be, unfortunately, pretty loaded. There's already people who are going to make up their minds. They're immediately going to snap to their biases. So I figured, one, might as well make some disclosures, and two, make sure I know where my biases and kind of head lies. I was recommended this via the React Recommendations channel on the Discord. It's one of those that I've been on a Star Wars binge fairly recently over on the VOD channel. We played through Force Unleashed 1 and 2. Kind of talking about how, man, I just kind of missed the day where, when we could just enjoy Star Wars and things weren't inherently such loaded topics. Something Dave Filoni, something Kathleen Kennedy, something series is awful, something insert Warhammer 40k talking point here. Games Workshop, get over it. It's a word. So I wanted to kind of express where my headspace is. Look, I'll watch the sequels. I like the prequels. In fact, I like 1, 2, and 3 far more than I like Episode 4. Like, it's whatever. People have their preferences. I have a subjective enjoyment of the sequel trilogy. I have my narrative disagreements with the sequel trilogy. I'll still watch them. It's whatever. Could they have been done differently? Yes. Could they have been done better? I would argue absolutely. But it's one of those things that I'm tired of having the same conversation 500 times. So I figured I'll have a soy woe point at the video, point at the reaction in regards to discussions on the topic. And I'm assuming as well, this is going to be a good faith piece, as this was recommended to me, as well as someone checking with the original uploader saying, hey, is this okay? And naturally, I'll try to be as transformative as I can. So taking this as a good faith conversation point, right? But yeah, just kind of where my head's at. Kind of tired of all the dissonance in the arguments about Star Wars. Without further ado, rewriting the Star Wars Sequel Trilogy because it broke my brain by Khanlusa.
I deeply love Star Wars. Watching the original trilogy is one of the earliest family bonding moments I can remember, and I've grown up watching the prequel trilogy arrive, going to the cinema to see each movie come out, and loving the build-up to the eventual tragedy of not just Order 66 itself, but the creation of Darth Vader and the Galactic Empire.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
I had a comment recently that was something along the lines of, I wish the Star Wars prequel trilogies were kind of like a political drama. And I'm just like, the J. Jonah Jameson, like, are you serious? That was the whole point. The fall of democracy, the rise of the empire. Did we just miss that memo?
Some parts are certainly more painful than others to see right now. But that's not what we're here for today.
It was hard watching 3
the
recently.
Trilogy and its story, something that definitely hasn't been done to death already by many a capable writer. My original plan was to cover Knights of the Old Republic, and sadly a combination of things in my life rendered that unfeasible at this time. Something for next year, perhaps. Maybe the remake will even be out by then. Anyways. If you've seen my previous videos on The Force Unleashed, then you know I'm familiar with pulling the lore out by its juicy bits and rearranging the guts into something more entertaining. I hope to do the same here, as I let slip in a few comments under that video that I have indeed written stories for this setting before, including a fully planned out rewrite of the sequel trilogy. I don't see myself getting the spare energy to finish writing it in full anytime soon, so what better way to share my love for Star Wars on this special date than seeing how far I can bend the lore until it breaks. Now this video will be split into 3 main sections, with the longest being for The Force Awakens, as it's the one I have the most detail on, but I will give basic outlines for what I would have done with episodes 8 and 9 as a follow-up, and hopefully I'm able to bring any skeptics around to accepting my flagrant indulgences.
Look, I at least appreciate the, hi, this is what we're doing. By the end, hopefully this sways your opinion. That disclosure, right? If you want to influence my opinions, that's fine. Just tell me that you're influenced. Look, I'm not going to move hearts and minds with this one, right? Let's be real, right? There's going to be people who are going to be already in chat, Oh, episode 9 was the worst movie ever made. That's a little bit of a bold claim there. Animated movies like Leo the Lion exist. Thank you, Saberspark, for that one. I think that is a little bit of a stretch. I do have my narrative issues. I continuously rant about the kukri scene from episode 8. That just goes missing in post. Like, Rey 100% lost in episode 8. Like that's just objective fact. Like go through the choreography, go to where you have the guard choke holding her, and then the kukri is gone. You're telling me that in at least 1 to 2 beats, right? You know, beats, tempo, etc., Rey would not have lost. Just throwing that out there. I have ranted on this just ad infinitum. It is one of those that I think is one of the lowest points the sequel trilogy has. I absolutely do. I think it's just objectively awful that they could not choreograph that scene correctly. I think the scene, it was great. The setup was fine. The stakes were fine. I think that a lot surrounding it was fine. The fact that they're just like, nah, let's remove it in post, that's the thing that stands out to me about it.
Let's get started, shall we?
Okay, so here's where, before we get into the rewrite, I think we need to establish, what does the sequel trilogy intend to impart? Because there is at least some semblance of Legends, right? Now we're going to get someone who's going to correctly say, well, Palpatine came back, it's Palpatine all along. Yes, dear viewer, you would be correct. Well, Palpatine didn't come back in Legends. Whoa, let me stop you there. That's objectively not true. I, myself, have not read things like Warrior and the Crystal Star. I, myself, have not read about the Yuzhong Vong. I've not read the entire Abeloth line. I have not read the lizard people soul interment thing. There's a lot of actual Legends content that I have not intaken, and I will be the first to say that. I am not a loresmith. I'm not the specialist here. If we're going to blatantly lie, though, and say, well, Palpatine would not have done that in Legends, that's just objectively incorrect, because Palpatine did in Legends, right, have clones. He did essence transfer himself into it, and as far as I'm aware, that was a whole plot point after Return of the Jedi, something about the core of the galaxy, Sith fortress worlds, trying to convert Luke Skywalker once more. It is disingenuous to even remotely claim that Palpatine as a character would not have done something like that. To which the argument does correctly come to, but how was it introduced? How was the concept itself? How was that pitched? Yes, we can absolutely take issue with that. It is objectively wrong, and I will say this again, to say that Palpatine would not have done that in Legends. I think that the execution could have been better. I think that, some plot points maybe, not being as heavily contested, right? Rian Johnson in episode 8, something about Sith lightning. Lightning hits the ground first, and that's, I guess, why Snoke had his, lightning hit the ground and then hit Kylo Ren, right? Look, I have issues. I'm not going to say I don't, okay? I think that we need to be fair, though. And that's how that's how criticism works. We need to be fair. So going back to the discussion of what is it trying to really showcase us, right? It's trying to showcase a worse-off rebellion dealing with Palpatine, which was not inherently dealt with, and a Luke Skywalker who has, for all intents and purposes, just given up. He has decided the fate of, sure, I guess the galaxy, but also of the Jedi. The future of the Jedi effectively gets cut off with him, right? I think we can, going with the direction they went with, that's what they wanted to do. Thus leading into Rey taking the books, Rey becoming a new Jedi. I am all the Jedi, right? A final climactic showdown. I hate using the C word because YouTube gets really touchy about that one, actually. Apex is what we use. The final Apex showdown between Palpatine being all the Sith, quote unquote, and just being him. Sure, the clones, I forgot the Sith Eternal, was it? I can't remember what the cultists around him were, right? But greatly contrasting against Rey and being all the Jedi, to which I argue that scene would have been made a lot better by having things like Qui-Gon, Mace Windu, etc. Reasonably any Jedi who would be presumed deceased at that point in time to show up, right? The power of one versus the power of many, right? And thus leading into being able to choose your own identity, to leave behind the name of the Empire and to go with I am a Skywalker, right? Thus, we can also go into, and this was a plot point brought up early on, I think it was after episode 7, but it was in supplemental material, where Leia was directly called out in Senate, Congress, whatever, in space politics for being related to Darth Vader, right? Being related to Anakin Skywalker. We do have that as precedent in at least the expanded material, in my opinion, which wasn't executed correctly or in any way, shape, or form, in any way that was satisfactory in my opinion, but we already have that as precedent as something they're trying to storytell with, trying to escape from your past, trying to have that choice, right? And when we get into Finn, we'll talk about how choices are kind of yanked from people. So in more or less words, I think that's generally where we're trying to go with this, is trying to tell a story of a beaten and battered rebellion. The big bad has not been vanquished, and at the end of the day, it's being able to make your own choices. And F what anyone else thinks, right? Doing what's right because it's the right thing to do. I could see that I would pitch that as a, like, too long didn't read.
Hi, Editing Morgan here. There was going to be a title crawl here, but I figured that might be annoying for some of you with it scrolling for so long, and I also don't want to, like, assume anyone's reading speed, so I'm just gonna put the entire text on screen, and you can pause to read, and I'll do the same with the other title crawls.
Okay, I'm for that, actually. I think that's a very approachable way to do that. So, episode 7, The Savage Dawn. When the Empire fell, the galaxy breathed a sigh of relief and turned its attention to rebuilding. Imperial remnants quickly disappeared from known space, and aftermath came the Republic, a return to democracy and fairness in a galaxy sorely lacking either. 45 years has passed since the fall of the Empire. Master Skywalker's nascent Jedi are now deceased, betrayed by one of their own. A sister faction called the First Order is spreading. Their influence across the galaxy recently emerged from treacherous unknown regions. Okay, so we are pulling more from Legends at this point in time, I would feel. Legendary General Leia Organa, no stranger to fighting such an enemy, leads the Independent Freedom Coalition to a valiant effort to stop the First Order, for their cruel schemes can encompass the entire galaxy. With the New Republic's backing, they're losing ground. A last-ditch effort to sway the New Republic into action before it's too late. General Organa seeks out a meeting with Chancellor Lenever Villacham. So, I think it's interesting setting it so far into the future. I think that it helps remove a lot from the context, because episode 3 borders episode 4, or I guess, if you were back in 71, no, 77, I think, original Star Wars, right? No subscript, no subtext. That 3 borders onto 4 pretty well. Unless you have things like Rogue One, which are even still technically closer, and Rogue One leads into episode 4. I think it was an interesting choice to go from Return of the Jedi into Force Awakens, especially because it's kind of like Code Geass and Rose of the Recapture. You keep wondering what all the characters are doing at this point in time, right? Sure, it's on Rose, right? It's on her Geass, it's on her and not Suzaku, right? And them trying to do their things. And you'll see bits and pieces, like you see the Akito the Exile cast, you see Renya, I believe, you see Suzaku, Colin, you even see Lucian C2 at one point, right? Like there's a veritable who's who, Gino even. But I think there's a nice balance that needs to happen for that to work, where it needs to not be the focal point. Easter eggs and cameos, I think, are great, and I think they can be incredibly additive. I know that for me, when I was watching Rose of the Recapture, the entire last, 3 to 4 episodes, I'm just like, is Lelouch going to show up? Which reasonably he didn't, and there's plot reasons why he wouldn't. He's just a drifter in the world. But I think that was detractive, because I feel that there could have been a little more exposition to kind of explain what was going on there. So naturally throughout this, where's Han? Where's Chewie? Right? Where's Luke? Why is Luke not in the picture? Where's Leia? Right? Where's Lando? C-3PO, R2-D2, etc. Where's the cast? And I think that especially in a franchise as long running as this, I think can become the issue if you're doing it so soon after. I think it's an interesting decision to move it out 45 years, but at that point, I would even argue, don't even have the returning cast, right? Well, my mentor happened to be Leia, and Leia, was a fighter. She never gave up against the Empire. Right? Have kind of invocations of things like that. Have cool little things dropped, because you are telling a new story at this point, or at least what I assume is going to be a new story. And I think if you're going to tell a new story, or if you're going to expand upon an existing story, that needs to be first and foremost when doing something like this. Absolutely. You need to... Are you working on this with the groundwork and trying to tie Palpatine falling down the shaft? Maybe that's the intro to episode 7. Palpatine falls down the shaft, and you just, in HD, you start seeing him fall, right? And then he ends up something, everything goes white, and then he wakes in the clone's body, right? I mean, like something like that could help tie that together. But especially when episode 7 came out, especially starting with what's his face, because I guess he was in a comic, right? And showcasing episode 7 is, for all intents and purposes, very invocative of episode 4. So I do also have to pose the point, if you have issues with episode 7 plot points, I would recommend you go and look at episode 4 and see if they hold up, why they hold up, and if there's an unjust or unfair criticism there. Lot to unpack with this.
All right. Okay, good. Now, we've set the stage with a few key differences here, haven't we? Luke is already dead, and the Resistance is now the Independent Freedom Coalition. The latter because it isn't just a splinter of the New Republic's military now, but a coalition of all the people currently under threat of the First Order's expansionist goals. The former because trying to drag old man Luke out of retirement to fix everything did not appeal to me, and we only needed one of the original 3 to serve as a mentor and link to the old guard, and she was right there. Yes, Carrie Fisher passing away impacted what they could do.
By George Lucas's own admission as well, she was the main character, right? Like the people who say, well, George Lucas something lost all writing ability going into the prequels. So okay, so we are going to give more credit to the original trilogy, are we not? Did George Lucas not go on record saying that Princess Leia was the main character? You know, some random farm boy doing Jedi things and some, scruffy scoundrel doing pirate things effectively. And she's the one who's having to kind of hold the rebellion together, right? So if we're going with that logic, I think that's very invocative of that. And I think that's incredibly fair, considering that, sure, Leia's the main character. Sure, we see a lot of things through, I would argue, the perspective of Luke. I would see that as, kind of a Skywalker story, as I think Lucas has said otherwise, right? But, I think that's an incredibly fair thing to kind of latch onto.
In the last film, I am purely approaching this from a character perspective.
Sure.
The title crawl would give way to stars as the camera pans down, showing a shining Ecumenopolis, planet Hosnian, capital world of the New Republic. Cutting to the interior of a shining tower on the surface, we see Leia looking out a window, waiting.
So I feel what we're doing here is the introduction, kind of to one actually, right? Kind of the introduction to the Trade Federation, right? Just above some random place, which ended up being Naboo, and a very big plot point, right? But sure, okay, I can see where we're going with this.
For her meeting with the Chancellor. She seems troubled and her thoughts are interrupted by his secretary letting her know he's ready to see her. As she moves to step inside his office, a close shot at her waist shows the hint of a lightsaber hilt safely tucked beneath her stylish silver coat. Chancellor Velcham, a stocky Tarsant, maintains only the barest veil of politeness, clearly irritated by her presence and referring to her by the rank of general, putting an emphasis on the importance of peace and diplomacy as opposed to the guerrilla warfare she's engaged in with the First Order. Leia doesn't seem surprised by his attitude. She's frustrated and tired, but unwavering in her conviction as she attempts to warn him that the First Order is a genuine threat to the Republic and that they need to act instead of sitting back while the Outer Rim burns. He dismisses the troubles of the Outer Rim as bringing order to territories rife with lawless vagabonds, criminal gangs, and all manner of scoundrels taking advantage of the decent folk who happen to live there, snidely asking her, "How is your husband these days? Has he crawled out of his hole yet, or is he still hiding in shame with the rest of the gutter trash?" There is a brief moment where her jaw tenses and a low camera shot would reveal her hand curling into a fist, but she forces a smile, remarking that she is not her so-called father and that family can be an agonizing experience.
I disagree with the intro, actually. I like the dealing with the Darth Vader plot point pretty early. I think that this is too aggressive for Leia. At least Leia portrayed in the films. Don't get me wrong. Leia had a lot of rebellious spirit, had a lot of more aggressive negotiation actions, very, very much like her mother in a lot of aspects. I think that this is a little too aggressive. I like the angle here. I think that if this was the first shot that people, your average audience coming into the movie, right? I think that this would be a miss for a lot of them. At minimum, how many people would say, and I think this is a fair criticism, how many people would say let's hypothetically say that, Disney allegedly wrote this, right? Let's say that Disney did pitch this as episode 7. And people saw this in theaters. And people would immediately go, well, it's the new writers immediately trashing Leia in the new scene. Because you can see that people will draw that conclusion. It's not necessarily about, the subtext, not necessarily how deep the intrigue is, not even necessarily understanding it, which becomes an issue in trying to deal with modern media. Where does the average audience expectation lie? You do want the audience to come to their own conclusions at a certain point, right? You want to point the audience in the right direction to come to conclusions, but you don't necessarily want to ham-fist it in, right? See Canto Bite from episode 8, right? Oh, war profiteering bad. Okay, did we have to spend 40 minutes of the movie ham-fisting this plot point in? I mean, you could have, it very much could easily have been cliff notes in regards to a certain manufacturer's logo or something on, say, TIE Fighter wings or something like that, right? Or certain branded tools and stuff like that. And it's like, but I thought these were for the rebellion. Well, war profiteering, right? I mean, I think that would have been a less invasive way to do it. So, in my opinion, especially with how your modern theater audience does look at things like this, I do feel that there would be a not small percentage of the fan base who would latch on to something like this and then cry misogyny. They would cry a character assassination. They would cry a character changed way too much. Something. What I'm arguing, I think Leia's a little too aggressive in this personally. I actually like the plot point of her leaving her lightsaber behind, right? Yes, absolutely. Jedi Leia, kind of a terrifying thing to think about, but I think it's an interesting storytelling point. And I actually really respect it where, sure, while you can just kind of solve your problems doing space magic and, waving around lightsabers, there's something about the diplomacy and following, things like due process and going through the politics and the BS that goes along with that and showing your integrity in that manner, with Leia also having a bit of, her mischievous actions going on, aggression in her ways, well, I'm sorry, Viceroy. I mean, if, look, this is kind of a do or don't moment. And if you're not there, look, man, we can't say that you were there. Right. Just to put it lightly. But then you have your subtext, your political intrigue. Right. You use that politician keyword, so to speak. I think that this is an interesting take on it. I think if it was for a different audience, I think it would land. I think if this was a game and not necessarily Leia, I think this would go really hard. However, I think that because it's Leia, because we have to remember perception in main media versus expanded media, right? I've talked about how I had somebody, there was a streamer I was watching, and they were talking about how Halo Infinite bad, effectively, right? And points they bring up, and it's just like, well, yeah, I mean, I think it was cool that offensive bias showed up, we kind of have, that offensive bias versus mendicant bias kind of thing. And they literally asked, who is mendicant bias? Now, obviously, if you're a Halo fan, and especially if you read the terminals in Halo 3, sure, you'll have I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. Sure, you'll have understanding of who offensive bias and, mendicant bias are, especially in relation to the Forerunners and the Flood, right? But your average person who's just played, here, have your Halo game, have Halo CE2, 3, ODST 3, 4, 5, Infinite, Halo Wars 1, Halo Wars 2, they might not have the full context if they're just playing through the game, right? So when it comes to Star Wars, because we've had so much, Timothy Zahn did a bunch of novels for it, right? We had the old Thrawn trilogy, I believe was a trilogy. We had, Warrior and the Crystal Star. We have supplemental, material out the wazoo, Clone Wars. And then we get into Legends and things, canon, and things kind of get rotated out. And it's like, well, we do have things like, the Knights of Ren get their own backstory. And we do have things like, Clone Wars was canonized again. Okay. But hear me out. I haven't seen things like Andor. Okay. I haven't caught up on The Mandalorian. If I'm being completely honest, it's okay. Not my cup of tea. You have to market modern Star Wars to me personally. That's just because I have so many better things. I have work to do, right? And so if you started episode 10, Grogu Strikes Back or whatever, and I haven't watched The Mandalorian, and reasonably most of your audience probably hasn't watched The Mandalorian, doesn't care about The Mandalorian, and in comparison with mainline canon, is it necessarily going to make sense? And that's the point that I'm getting at. When you start to muddy the water with a bunch of, because Halo does this, right? Halo and Star Wars, I feel, are very similar in this. When you start having a bunch of supplemental materials, and it's required that you, or even Marvel, right? MCU, it's required that you go into the next entry with all the supplemental material intaken, right? Dude, your average moviegoer doesn't care. You can have the best written TV show, magazine, or not magazine, like comic, but if only a portion of your audience deals with that, and then you expect everyone to do that, you're just going to frustrate your audience, right? Like, let's think about it this way. This is the final point before we continue, right? Chat, I've talked to you about my thoughts on Halo 5 before. Well, I'm gonna reference you to all my other reactions about that. Well, but Kip, I wasn't here this entire time. You would be correct, and you have now proven my point. That is not putting, throwing shame at you. That is showcasing, look, sometimes we do have to rehash things multiple times because people just weren't there for that conversation, weren't here during that conversation. They could be incredibly new. They could have been, hey, Kip, last 3 years, I kind of just took off the internet, kind of coming back. What's she doing, right? But there's also a healthy balance of like, okay, reasonably though, going into episode 7, you've seen episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Let's be honest, you've seen at least these, right? And that would be the, okay, I will rehash the conversation again, but not for the 200th time, right? Like there's a give and take here. So supplemental materials, not necessarily bad. Probably don't put your big plot reveals behind supplemental materials.
All she wants is for other families to remain safe and whole from the machinations of the First Order. The Chancellor dashes her hopes when he reveals that the New Republic recently finalized a trade agreement with the First Order. As long as their attention stays on civilizing the Outer Rim, he sees no benefit in attacking them, especially when the New Republic has a pirating problem, and many of their best soldiers, agents, and civilians are continuously poached by the IFC. They can see the First Order as what it is, Chancellor. You can't tell me the similarity is lost on you. Their leader still carries the title of Emperor. That isn't harmless sentiment, it is purposeful. Valcham dismisses her concerns, arguing that the First Order are a different beast to the Empire. Where the Empire dismissed religion, the First Order is deeply spiritual. Where the Empire was staunchly xenophobic and human-centric, the First Order is a mix of many species from the unknown regions working together towards a common goal. Leia is not convinced by appearances, however. She trusts actions, and the actions of the First Order so far have been deeply troubling. She asks the Chancellor if he ever wondered why the pirate attacks chipping at the New Republic supply lines began around the same time the First Order emerged into the known galaxy. At this, the Chancellor tells her to get out unless she has proof of such wild insinuation.
This feels like something you do at least partially into Act 1. Opening on this is kind of a wild and bold way to open it. I like it. I like the spirit here. I don't know. Think Star Wars Episode 1, right? Trade Federation, whole stuff we just talked about, right? And, having a discussion. Well, Master Yoda says I should be mindful of the Force, right? Kind of ingratiating you versus something like Episode 2, right? You watch Episode 2, and it's just like, shot of the Naboo cruiser, landing, suddenly explosion because Jango Fett, my lady, we need to get out of here, and then going into the whole Anakin, traumatized child Anakin, hating politicians, like how it's kind of like in your face, so to speak. I feel that, like, you're trying to start the intensity of the story as if it's the Two Towers, right, where, you're going with, like, the three hunters, trying to track down the Uruk-hai from Merry and Pippin, Frodo and Sam going through, I forget what they were going through, Emyn right, being followed by Gollum. I feel like you're trying to open with that, rather than kind of ease people into it. I think it's bold. It can work, absolutely. But once again, this is, I guess, a jab at the Star Wars community as kind of a whole, because I don't know if I trust the ability to intake that information. And I'm trying to word that in the least offensive way possible, because when people say that they're going to do, it's going to be a new Star Wars channel, we're going to talk about the love of Star Wars and, fixing Star Wars, and then it becomes like, Kathleen Kennedy did this, the Acolyte actress did this, something, Dave Filoni. It's like, okay, this community just kind of showcases this pretty one track. And I don't know. I come from an era where I'm the boomer. I kind of just enjoy media. I'll have my criticisms on it. But much in the same way I view 40K, I personally don't want to go in to change it. If you put out a subpar product, you reap the rewards of a subpar product for all intents and purposes. Yo, I still got Return of the Jedi I can watch. This affects me zero. Then we get into, obviously, the follow-up discussion of something tourist, something new people bad, something sanctity of the hobby, purity, etc. And it's just like, bro, now we're talking in circles. I'm tired. I'm going to go watch Return of the Jedi. Have a good one. And that's really what my interaction with the modern Star Wars community has been, right? I think that, obviously, showcased from their work, they're clearly competent, they're clearly intelligent, right? So I don't think they fall into that. It's more of the online nebulous discourse. It's why I don't really like fandoms at all. Went back and watched the finale for Ruby episode Volume 8 and Volume 9. Especially knowing that Rooster Teeth, things happened after Volume 9. I think Volume 9's finale was kind of a good capstone on the series a little bit. Something about finding yourself, something about going when you're least needed, leaving it kind of open-ended. Personally, I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I had fun. And I don't think a lot of Star Wars fans really understand fun anymore. And I think that it's okay to have criticisms. It's okay to be upset and angry. It's okay to not be okay when you have something you've lived with for the past 40 years just feel like it's absolutely trounced upon. But there is a point where your inability to progress ends up being a global detriment. I use global in like the fandom term, like the fandom sense, right? It's a global detriment to be able to move forward, right? So, sure, Kip, you're upset with episode 8, with this whole kukri thing. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, honestly, they clearly just need whoever did the choreography for episode 3 back. They clearly need, to not write that out. And if it doesn't make sense, just fix it, right? I'm certain you could go to HEMA, SCA, Belagarth even, ACL. There are plenty of medieval reenactment groups who do deal with rapiers, who do deal with things like rawlings, which, kind of like wood, polypropylene kind of things, a little bit harder things. Some even will do shinai. I was part of a group that did shinai, the bamboo kendo swords. You know what those kind of move similar to, especially when you remove the suba? A lightsaber, because it can be an omnidirectional cutting tool with very lightweight. So, interesting. It's almost like if you were looking for organic feedback, there's already groups out there. And I'm sure the 501st as well would be more than happy to critique some sort of thing and sign some NDAs, right? Absolutely. So there. Not only have I complained, but now I have said in a reasonable capacity, this is how you fix this. And I think that's what's missing from a lot of things. Well, just fire everyone who worked on this movie. Fire everyone who worked on the sequel trilogy. Okay. Are you not engaging in the same mentality as Bungie Marathon? Oh, just fire all the devs. Okay. When it's just problematic individuals, namely management, who keep, for some reason, that Bungie's stealing artwork? Right? Like, can we just... You got to weed out the bad eggs, right? You can't... those overgeneralized statements are incredibly harmful to not only the product, but people who actually give a damn about the thing. Furthermore, the people who work on this are only doing what management tells them to do. You know who tells management what to do? Shareholders, investors, people who can actually be like, well, I would actually like this. I think that this would go well in here, even if it has nothing to do with the story. War profiteering. Okay, maybe that was a Ryan Johnsonism. I don't know. I personally have issues with how the direction of that movie went, as well as the choreography under his watch. But, it's making sure that not only you have a fix, but a reasonable fix. So, you can tell I've had this conversation way too many times. We are 30 minutes into we are 30 minutes in, 5 minutes in an hour and 8 minute video.
I have one of my best people working on that as we speak. I came here now to warn you that this is going to get worse, because no matter what you believe, I do what I do for the sake of the Republic, not in spite of it. And she leaves. So we learn several things here. Leia and Han are currently not together, and while the narrative wouldn't reveal why until later, it's for the same reasons as The Force Awakens. Losing their son to the dark side and the fallout therein broke them. Leia has a lightsaber, and there's the implication that she almost did something to the Chancellor when he brought up Han with the express purpose of getting a rise out of her, only to hold herself in check because she's better than that. Pirates
Sure.
are keeping the New Republic distracted, and there's a heavy sense of classism in the way they view the territories of the Outer Rim, dismissing the First Order's clear, aggressive expansion as a civilizing effort. This definitely won't backfire horribly. Dramatic swipe transition to the film.
I agree with all that. I thought all that was great. Cool. You've set the scene with numerous things. I'm okay with that. I think that Leia could have been a little less aggressive. I think I still remain on that point. But like, yeah, a lot of information was conveyed.
Familiar shape of a Star Destroyer, the design different than what we've seen before. There's a horizontal split giving the impression of a dragon's mouth. We're inside the Finalizer as soldiers of all different species rush back and forth preparing for a mission, wearing pristine white armor that is reminiscent of stormtroopers but again, distinct and different. The lines are harsher, more pointed, the eyes narrowed. We see Finn talking to 3 other soldiers, helmets off, and they refer to each other with names rather than numbers, allowing us to put together that Finn's last name is Dorn. In this version of things, the First Order does still
My brain immediately went Rogaldorn.
engage in some light child abduction, which they frame as salvation in the context of their shadowy religion, but the vast majority of their soldiers are not children ripped from families. The First Order is seen as a place of safety and order in the dangerous, chaotic territory of the unknown regions, which they call the frontier, and it came about through Imperial remnants accepting that they had to adapt or die, so they adapted by locking arms with other struggling species to form the First Order. As for the shadowy religion, that came about through Emperor Snoke Carlost, an enigmatic figure within the Empire who is unquestionably Sith. In fact, Sith are not an uncommon sight in the First Order, and they use Ilum as the location for the new academy, teaching the ways of the Sith by twisting them around this belief in a cosmic Dark Mother who watches over her children in the frontier and keeps them safe. The dogma of the First
I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a stretch, though. I know in Expanded Legends, did we not have the Knights of Rand? Like, really messed up dark side users? I mean, like, I wonder if it's to keep it more grounded, because, let's be real. Like, Emperor Palpatine just fell. The Empire's in disarray. Sure, some sort of Nuremberg trial situation is going to be happening with a lot of Grand Moffs, a lot of leadership in the Empire. Kind of fractured, kind of fragmented. I think that there is a power vacuum there, a power vacuum that's, maybe something like the Praetorian Guard or some kind of, secretive Sith cults, Sith force could exploit. Absolutely. But I think that we start getting to a power scaling issue there, because what does the rebellion return with? Luke can only be in so many places at once, and he, as far as I'm aware, at least in Legends, had lasting health implications from Palpatine. I could be wrong, though. I don't know. I thought it was Legends. It could be canon. I welcome clarification in the comment section. Like, dude is still great, dude is still like S tier, but he can only be in so many places at once, and that was actually what Disney tried to do with the whole force projection on an X-Wing kind of thing. And it was one of the comics, I believe. Or it was one of the comics or books, thus leading into Episode 8, where he projected himself across a vast distance, right? Like, I think that's interesting. I'll have to see what they're going to do with Luke as a plot point. And I think that it's very hard. Imagine, if you will, like, I don't know, the Hobbits made it to Bree, but then you had Saruman's Uruk-hai tracking them down all the way to Weathertop, right? Like, or do you think that would have made as much sense as the Nazgul tracking them down, splitting into 2 parties, one party going off and, dealing with Gandalf on Weathertop? That was more explored upon in the novelization of Fellowship of the Ring. But, like, which one do you think makes a little more sense, is a little more grounded? Now, obviously, we get to the 3 hunters. We get a little bit of power creep going. As well as an excuse to introduce Rohan, right? And like, yeah, okay, it makes sense that these are all Uruk-hai, right? And there's fewer in number because the Fellowship, Boromir as well, definitely, well, he's part of the Fellowship, but like Boromir did no small amount of damage, especially in the films, to that patrol of Uruk-hai. So I think that the issue I run into is, well, why don't we just have a bunch of Praetorian Guard just showing up to rebel bases under the order of some Grand Moff, right? And then doing the things. And I guess we kind of get a taste of this with what I've seen of The Mandalorian, something about what's-his-face. trying to power up and stuff. Dude, I don't remember the Mandalorian, if I'm being completely honest. I don't remember what Moff Gideon's entire thing was. So yeah, I think that I run into a reasonable barrier there.
The Order instills a belief that their forebears wanted to bring an end to the decadence and corruption of the Republic, and that Palpatine was betrayed by the weakness of his right hand Vader. They aren't simply invading the greater galaxy to spread their influence, but to avenge what was lost, in their minds, to greed and corruption. Now, the attack on Tarnal goes roughly the same way,
Sure.
with the key difference being that Jakku isn't a desert planet, but a snowy alpine one. Finn still watches a squadmate die and gets marked, he still witnesses the massacre without pulling the trigger himself, and Poe is still taken hostage by Kylo Ren, only here, Kylo is referred to as Darth Ruin because Sith. Throughout Finn's quiet freakout, we'd get
I want to see where they go with that, because I actually like that he was not a Sith. I like that because that was like, it feeds into the whole plot point of you're not Darth Vader, despite how much he tries, he could never be Vader. I think that we all wanted a Sith big bad. I actually liked that we didn't have a Sith big bad. Well, until Palpatine, that is.
the sense that something else is going on with him, like he's hearing and feeling things outside of himself, and he mutters to stay in control, to pull it in, lending more weight to the moment Ruin stares at him after the massacre. Is this meant to heavily imply Finn is Force-sensitive? Yes. We'd also see hints of Finn's relationship with Captain Phasma here, as she is the one to march him to stand with the rest of the troopers,
I already agree. Get more Phasma in there, please.
quietly reminding him to breathe and keep moving. Before they leave the planet, Finn retrieves the body of his dead squadmate himself. Naturally, interspersed in all of this, we'd still be introduced to Poe, but instead of a human man, he's talking to a Chiss defector from the First Order called Edron, who is handing him information that will prove their threat to the New Republic. He warns Poe against looking at any of it before he's off-world, because Sith interrogators will rip it out of his mind if he's caught. When Edron is dragged out for his execution, Ruin makes a brief speech to the gathered troopers about terrorists, heathens, and how hard-fought their sense of peace and order is, ending with the call of one voice, to which the soldiers respond in unison, one purpose.
What rating are we going for here? Are we going PG-13 or are we going R? Because that is a relevant distinction for story elements. Like, don't get me wrong, some films have gotten away with some pretty dark stuff, but that is a relevant distinction that I think should be made pretty quickly.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, we are introduced to Rey while she's meditating in a secluded cave, sunlight filtering down from above before she lunges into action, running through an obstacle course that's clearly seen a lot of use. She's shown using the Force to clear jumps and pull a swinging rope to her hand, but it's not perfect, and she struggles the longer and more intensely she taps into that power. When she reaches the end of the course, she's greeted by a droid called Aerox, who has a sleek, humanoid design, a matte black finish, and articulated plates on the face allowing him to express emotions. There are decorative little spurs on his chin, cheeks, and brow, and he has pointed ears in the right place, almost like he was designed to resemble a very specific species. Aerox informs Rey that she was unfortunately slower this time by 6 seconds, something that obviously frustrates her. Now, this isn't to counteract the criticism of Rey being a Mary Sue, because I truly detest that complaint whenever it comes up. Not a single goddamn person knows how to use it in a way that doesn't make me immediately cringe. No, this is
Yeah. Yeah, it gets annoying after a while.
more to do with setting up a revelation down the line. Imagine planning things out rather than flying by the seat of your pants. Anyway, leaving the cave, we'd see that Rey only needs to walk a short distance before she's home, living in an old smuggler den hidden in the sprawling pathways of the Atrava Maze, a cluster of plateaus that stand out from the vast white plains. Inside, she greets a female Cathar cooking food, calling her Mama even though her name is Vase, and they are obviously different species. Vase is tall and athletic with rusty fur, a short mane of black hair on her head, and dark blue eyes. She also has cybernetics, specifically replacing her left arm and leg.
So here's what this is going to unfortunately come to a generalized theater audience. You will immediately have complaints. This is not that I have complaints with this. These are the complaints that you're going to get. You're going to get complaints of furry baiting. You're going to get complaints of DEI, something, prosthetics. As in poor taste as that complaint would be. You're going to get complaints about inclusivity. You're going to go and complaints about, once again, being a Mary Sue. So, I mean, obviously, I think reasonably, we can say that a lot of these reservations are kind of BS, kind of bogus, kind of dumb. However, unfortunately, that is what is going to be waiting for things like this, thus making Star Wars kind of a hard series to tackle. Because, sure, other species exist in the galaxy. We've known this since literally Star Wars, before A New Hope Star Wars, right? Which, don't get me wrong, A New Hope is just kind of like, rebranded, right? Just, kind of repackaged, so to speak. But, like, I already see the screeching that would happen from this, and it will have a knock-on effect for the entirety of this sequel.
She's already covered the tradition of losing a limb or two in a Star Wars film. She comes across reserved and observant, picking up immediately that something is bothering Rey and cautioning her not to push herself too hard when Rey tells her about the lost time, which only seems to frustrate her more as she remarks that normal training does almost nothing to help her improve now. Regardless, Rey quickly moves the conversation to other topics, asking if they're going back, to which Vace confirms they are. This would lead to a similar sequence when Rey is introduced to us in the film, showing her and Vace heading out on speeders to a wrecked Star Destroyer, exploring the depths, retrieving valuable pieces of tech from deep within the ship. Key details here would be right before they head out, Rey takes a moment to look up at a smaller ship hidden away in their home with sadness and regret. This ship has obviously seen use but remains sleek and elegant, and clearly hasn't been broken down for parts. Another thing is Vace using an orange lightsaber to cut open a security door within the Star Destroyer wreckage and levitating the cut section out of the way so she doesn't crush anything inside, showing...
I mean, so for fans, right? For fans, people have been ingratiated in the lore, etc. I think that there's just too much too quick. I mean, but then again, we look back to novels, right? Reasonably so. We look back to novels like J.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, right? You know what happens in the first 5 chapters? Chapter 5, I'm pretty sure it is chapter 5, is Riddles in the Dark. Chapter 5 is literally Bilbo falls into Gollum's cave. A lot happens in the first 5 chapters. So I think it's paced better for a book, even for a game that might be level-based. I think if I was to watch this in a theater, I think that there's just too much to intake. Sure, don't get me wrong. People call me a small brain all the time. I'm a dingus, let's be real, right? It's good information. It's not that it's bad information by any means. I think immediately throwing the yellow lightsaber into it, the speeders are kind of fine, right? I mean, it would fit at home with something like New Hope, fit in home with something like Episode 1, right? I think that one's pretty fine. There's already I think this also would feed into, and I think this is one of the greater purposes as well, of a more Jedi and Force sensitive focused story, which I know a lot of people love, but there is also, we need the Padmes, we need the oh my god, we need the Bail Organas, we need Leia's, right? We need the Boba Fett's, the Jango Fett's, right? We need other people who aren't just Force sensitive, as flashy as the scenes can be, absolutely, right? The Mandalorian as well, right? Sure, we have the Darksaber and stuff in there, right? But it's like, I feel that what augments Star Wars is its ability to not just focus on space wizards, but to also focus on the mundane, to focus on, Leia and Mon Mothma literally planning a assault on the Death Star too, right? Like, you need those grounded moments. If it was something along the lines of, let's take the same Bothan spy sequence, we got these from the Bothan spies, this is our whole thing, right? Like, imagine glamour shots, as I'll call that, of Mark Hamill maybe grabbing his lightsaber, maybe looking at his arm and flexing it, and then you hearing Darth Vader's, in the back, in the background, right? Han maybe thumbing his blaster, right? I think that there's a lot going on, and I think it would clutter up the scene rather than, this is what you need to know. This is who's talking. Who has the talking stick? Oh, it looks like Han says that his team's almost ready. And then, I'll volunteer as well comes from off screen, and it goes to Luke, right? And, Luke comes down. He's like, I'll volunteer for this mission. Him and Leia hug each other. Leia asks, what's wrong? And when she asks what's wrong, it pans to her, pans back to Mark Hamill on the previous shot. Ask me another time, right? I think that there is something to be said for simplicity. I think that simplicity and complexity are two halves of the greater whole.
That she too is force sensitive and in possession of a double-bladed saber that can disconnect into 2 separate hilts. She stows it in a leather holster on the back of her belt, where it could be mistaken for some canisters or a light, purposefully obscuring that she has it. While they collect the pieces they can carry, Rey expresses frustration over forces like the Empire never staying dead, citing the ancient Sith Empire, what came with Palpatine, and finally the First Order, clearly hinting that she feels they should be doing something about it rather than hiding away on Jakku, but Vace shuts that conversation down and they leave. They hand in their pieces at Nema Outpost, where Onkar Plutt is just as condescending and cheap, but it's Vace who handles talking to him, while Rey watches the other scavengers cleaning up their finds, huddling around rickety shelters and heaters, her eyes lingering on a mother wiping the tears off her child's face. Instead of rations, scavengers are paid in barter chips that are only good for spending at the market outside Nema, which is more of a town than a trading post here. The affluent
Okay, so it's just, we're just playing Fallout New Vegas Dead Money. Got it. We got the funny chips.
side safely walled off from everyone else. Back home, there's clearly tension, and Rey argues with her guardian about the endless repetition of their life on Jakku, to which Vace reminds her, "I understand it's difficult, but it's what your mother wanted. She wanted you safe, and you are safe here. Sulio will return eventually, and this will all become a distant memory, but for right now, we must stay put and keep our heads down." This is a rationale Rey has heard many times before, and she is tired of it, arguing against the idea of Sulia, her mother, ever coming back, that it's been 10 years and something could have happened to her, asking Vace what the point of having a code about honor and strength is if all they do is meekly accept things the way they are. Vace doesn't have an answer for her, and Rey leaves to sit outside, watching the sunset and the stars twinkle into existence. Her eyes catch the rising glow of a starship leaving the planet. Filling with tears, she quickly wipes away when she hears the peal of familiar beeps and whistles. As in the movie, Rey meets BB-8 getting harassed by Tito and rescues him, having the same "where are you from?" that's classified, Me Too big secret exchange, which can be read as Rey making light of her life in hiding, or that she genuinely might not have all the information about her history given how reticent Vace is to.
So here's what I actually like about this, and I think that this is actually on the right track. I think we needed to spend a little bit more time with Rey before and understand her character a little more, dive in a little more in the movie versus kind of getting what we got, something about, showcase, popping open the panel, looking for parts, sliding down on the sled, right? Dealing with what's his face at the rations outpost, right? And then just kind of going from there and then going into this bit, right? It felt like there was a reasonable assumption, and I think some story beats got missed in order to, why should she care, right? Well, clearly she's just somebody who is good of heart. She's down on her luck. I guess you could maybe even argue, the whole Luke parallel kind of thing. I think we needed a little bit more characterization and some more conversation bits. Contrary to what I would argue many people say, I don't think Daisy really did a bad job. I think that she did a good job. I think that obviously I do have issues with story. I have issues with the romance subplot in 9. That actually made me cringe in theaters. Personally, I would much prefer a more platonic relationship myself. But I think this is on the right track, and I actually like that this was brought up. I think what helps build into this is having something to build into, right? Having your hook. Don't get me wrong. The entire hook about Leia having her lightsaber, something about Han and her not being together, right? You can have a solid hook, but eventually you have to be okay. So here's your hook, right? If I started off a video, because you see this in YouTube all the time, right? And I started the video off along the lines of, and that was the absolute craziest amount of damage I've ever seen, right? And then you do a swipe cut, and then it goes to, "Hey YouTube, how's it going? Today we're talking about the top 10 best Final Fantasy weapons across all the games," right? Something like that, right? You have your hook, and then that leads you into your introduction. And then your introduction, you build on that to your hook, right? And then you see the craziest amount of damage you've ever seen. I don't know. Maybe someone rationalizes as the funny thing in 15 you can do to the giant land turtle. I've only played 7 Crisis Core. I've only played 7 base, not the remake, and 14. So I apologize if I don't have the details correct. Eventually I will make my way through Final Fantasy in its entirety. But you see how that kind of makes sense? Because I deal with it in my line of work, And I'm sure they deal with it in line of work. A lot of us have to deal with that. How do you capture an audience? You have 30 seconds to capture your audience. Something that I very specifically fail at because of how long I drone on for. Like, I understand my shortcomings and I understand why things are done in a certain way. You want that hook. Episode 1, showing some good establishing shots that are kind of evocative of Episode 4. Episode 4, original Star Wars, when it came out in theater, right? You have the Star Destroyer coming in from an underneath shot, right? It goes over, right? From the time, I understand that was pretty freaking cool, right? For Episode 7, right? You have the title crawl, and then it goes to the fight on the planet, right? Like, you have your hook that you build into later, but we need a good introduction. And I think that the writing to make certain assumptions about Rey to kind of shorthand into, oh, well, this is just this is kind of Luke Skywalker parallel. This is a person who means well and is willing to help another in need. I think that having more would have helped is what I'm trying to get across. And I like that they're writing into this.
Talk about it. Bringing BB-8 home, however, causes the tension of the day to finally snap. Vace is angry that Rey brought an unfamiliar droid straight to them, citing a previous incident where she made the mistake of trusting the wrong person, and Vace had to kill a lot of people to keep them safe. Rey defends herself, citing how helpless BB-8 was, that one's strength is an obligation to help. When Vace continues to berate her for not being careful enough, Rey snaps. It's better than shutting everything out. All you care about is hiding. You never talk about Mother except to tell me why we need to stay here, like she's just an excuse. I'd rather risk being found again than turn into you. These words hit Vace like a physical blow, and after a moment of heavy silence, where regret starts to creep into Rey's expression, Vace quietly remarks that Rey can find the droid's owner tomorrow, and slinks away to her room. So there's a lot going on here already. Rey isn't alone on Jakku, but has a parental figure with a mysteriously absent mother, and for whatever reason, that missing mother is the cause of their presence on this miserable little snowball. Rey is aware of her Force sensitivity and is actively training it under the guidance of Vace, who has a lightsaber and knows how to use it, but there's no hint towards either of them being Jedi nor Sith, as even though Rey mentions a code that favors strength, it's in the context of helping those weaker than you. Swipe transition. The scene of Poe getting tortured by Ren is largely unchanged, save for a bit where Poe taunts him by saying he's a disgrace to the name Organa, which prompts Ren to forego any sense of diplomacy and brute forces the existence of BB-8 out of his mind. The real change here is when we return to Finn and find him attending a funeral for those lost in the tonal assault, including his squadmate. He stands apart from the remaining two, who seem to carry some animosity towards him now, perhaps projecting their own grief and anger onto him even though there was nothing he could have done. This scene would give us more insight into the spiritual aspect of the First Order. The process is very ritualized with flickering candles and smoking censers, and an individual in subdued grey robes called Archon Sirach chanting before the bodies are cremated in the green fire of a morbid, elaborate forge.
I feel like there's a lot of KOTOR-isms here. I haven't played KOTOR. I understand a little bit about KOTOR, understand a little bit about Darth Nihilus, a little bit about Revan, a little bit of the plot reveal there, a little bit about Scion, right? Darth Scion. And it feels like it would be very much a more Force-sensitive heavy story. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, like we've discussed previously. But when we start talking about... when we start talking about what is the core of what's being written here, right? Why is it being written this way? What is the intent here? It is to have a more space wizard power fantasy story, in my opinion. And it is utilizing things in universe that would generally happen, right? Being able to wipe something out of people's minds, right? Having Sith alchemy, right? That's a huge thing, especially in Legends Expanded. Expanded. I'm not playing L5R right now. I wish I was playing L5R right now. In Legends content, Legends continuity, right? Like a lot of Sith alchemy stuff that we hear reference to. I don't know enough about it. I know it's thrown around, so I think it's interesting to lean into that. I think for the Star Wars fans that like KOTOR, SWOTOR, Force Unleashed, things like that, I think there's absolutely a story here. I think that, once again, I don't think it's as grounded, though. Not necessarily that it's an outright dismissal of, wow, this bad. More of a, it's how you tailor your audience to this.
See, they don't simply burn the bodies, but compress the ashes into beads, handed out to those closest to the dead, the Archon speaking as this happens. For some of you, these deaths are the first. For others, this is just another reminder of our purpose. The Dark Mother knows your pain, she feels your loss, and the blood you spill for her. She cries out for justice. For you know who is truly at fault for these deaths, has always been at fault for the suffering of our brothers and sisters. Their decadence and elitism brought us here, pushed us to the frontier, forced us to contend with threats they could never face in their deepest nightmares. But we survived. No, we have thrived because of the Mother and her champions. Emperor Palpatine began her great work when he sent Admiral Kast to our aid, and the Republic murdered them both. Emperor Khanlusa tried to make them see reason, tried to extend mercy, and the Republic spurned him. They spurned the Mother's gifts and pushed him and our forebears in the frontier. Emperor Khanlusa continued Admiral Kast's work in bringing her salvation to us all, and the Republic has always resented our survival. They will never see us as worthy, only as savages. So what is your answer, children? And the gathered soldiers roar back. One voice, one purpose. Finn only murmured it, too preoccupied with the red bead in his hand, hanging on a cord. A tall Chiss-woman with short hair and a black...
This is definitely episode 2 choreographed, or it feels very invocative of it. I guess you could even say episode 5. It's very Star Wars to be able to deliver exposition, context, have scenes, and then kind of jump cut to the next. So I think it's very invocative of older Star Wars, and I think that's definitely additive.
Plain uniform comes to stand beside him, her posture stiff, her hands held loosely behind her back. This is Phasma without her armor on. She tells him that his team will understand eventually, and that if they don't, they can be transferred. He insists he wants to get through to them, and Phasma understands, but reminds him that their survival in the field depends on their trust for one another. Outside the memorial hall, Finn is accosted by Darth Ruin, who bluntly informs him that a rogue, untrained adept will not be tolerated. Once their mission on Jakku has concluded, he will be removed from the Stormtrooper Corps and sent to Ilum for formal training in the ways of the Sith. At Finn's obvious discomfort, Ruin coolly remarks that if he had been trained from the beginning, his friend would still be alive. But now that their guest has been broken, it's only a matter of time before they leave this graveyard, and Finn can ensure such a thing never happens again.
I'm curious how they're going to write the Darth Ruin, because, like we said previously, I don't think Kylo Ren deserved the Sith title. I think that it was very additive of his plot point that he was not a Vader, that he was not a Sith, that he was not thus pushing to his, dude, you're just kind of going through some stuff, you just come back to the light, right? That kind of thing. More akin to Anakin, especially at the end, right? Return of the Jedi status, and then, Anakin from episode 3. I feel that I want to see how they write it, because I feel this could be very additive and transformative, but I need to see where they're going with this.
Finn takes a moment in a bathroom to panic and wash his face, clearly uneasy at the prospect despite the prestige such a position would surely bring. He spots Phasma in the hall outside and runs to her, informing her of what just happened. Any close familiarity falls away. She knows what's going to happen, what has to happen now, and there is nothing she can do about it. She obviously isn't happy about it, despite telling him that this is an honor, and shuts down any attempt to suggest he can get out of it somehow. Orders are orders, and she tells Finn as much, wistfully remarking about what a fine captain he would have made. But this is the law. All Force-sensitive individuals must receive formal training on Ilum. Left to his own devices, Finn only falls deeper into anxiety until he makes a split-second decision to run, and this is where he rescues Poe. In this version, he's honest with Poe about needing someone who can fly, admitting he doesn't want to be Sith because everyone can feel it. Something happens to the people who go to Ilum, and he doesn't care how big an honor it is. He is terrified to find out what that is. The rescue goes almost exactly the same way, except for Finn's reaction to blasting his fellow soldiers, where he is clearly conflicted and tries to avoid outright killing them when he can. They crash, Finn wakes up alone with Poe's jacket, and he slowly makes his way through the snowy night until he reaches a cluster of plateaus. He's attacked by an animal in the canyon and fends it off with a knife, stumbling away from the fight, clearly feeling the effects of a venom, until he sees a structure embedded in the canyon walls and thumps against the door. This door just so happens to be the home of Rey, Vace, and Aerox, and Finn collapses into their home right after seeing BB-8.
I'm getting mad Aragon vibes from this. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I do like Paladin. I do like the Aragon series. I still have yet to read the final Inheritance, but oh man, you take the droid, you take it back home, things end up falling. I mean, I guess to be fair, it's very tropey. To be fair, yeah, transparent. It's very tropey. I don't know. I'm getting Aragon specific vibes from this, and I kind of love it. I think that, yeah. I mean, to be fair, I am biased. I am biased towards Phasma getting more characterization because I think that Phasma was a huge missed opportunity in marketing. We got to see this chrome stormtrooper and this person's going to be this badass, but it didn't really pan out that way, did it? In fact, as far as I remember, wasn't Phasma written out in her entirety by episode 9, right? Was something garbage? Episode 7 had a garbage chute, returned in 8. Yeah, it returned in 8. You will always be scum, falls into the fire, right? That kind of thing. So, there was so much potential. We want to talk about character assassination. I feel like Phasma is such a missed opportunity. And I like that this is leaning into this. I like that there's acknowledgement that, Phasma had some stuff going on. I think I like this rendition over what we got in the films of kind of having more of a follow-up in regards to what happened on Jakku, rather than, explanation in regards to certain thing. Oh, this, the soldier from the planet, right? That kind of thing. Kind of slapstick comedy in certain aspects, trying to get off, right? Get off the ship. I think that I like parts of it. I don't know. I think I like parts of both of them. I think there's absolutely merit in this. I still think it's really heavily grounded in, Sith magics. I think that that's still a pretty big factor. I'm trying to figure out, even going back to, say, 4, 5, 6. I mean, the Force was pretty... It was used, obviously, but it wasn't this grandiose thing, right? You had Bespin in Cloud City, right? Darth Vader just starts throwing random things like suitcases and stuff at Luke, right? There's clearly a display of power there. Luke being able to jump out of the carbonite chamber, right? The Force powers do happen, but you kind of build up to them, right? I think that instead of being a more grounded through experience, especially going from more Force sensitives into an era without as many Force sensitives, prequels into original, going into sequels, I guess it does make sense though, right? Because there is that power vacuum like we discussed earlier. At this point, I'm going to chalk it up to a subjective preference thing personally. I think the writing ability here is cool. I think that the ability to go through this is there. I think that there's a cool end goal here. But I don't know if that screams Star Wars to me. But then again, I'm also ignorant because I have not played KOTOR, I've not played SWTOR. I'm sure I've played things like Force Unleashed, but I feel like Force Unleashed is still, the second one's a little less grounded. But the first one's still pretty grounded in a lot of aspects, and you lead up to the whole Star Destroyer scene.
Rey and Vace take care of Finn's injuries, briefly tying him up because they saw the white ink on the base of his neck denoting his ID as a stormtrooper and pertinent medical details. And yes, it does use the numerical code he has in the movie, but his government name in the First Order is still Finn Dorn. Vace questions him because what in the goddamn hell is the First Order doing on Jakku, and BB-8 demands to know why he has Poe's jacket. Feeling trapped
Doc Scallywag, thanks for the raid. Hey Raiders, how's it going?
and defeated, Finn tells them everything from the attack on Tarnal to now, finishing his story with the insistence that he doesn't want to be Sith. During this interrogation, Vace makes a cryptic remark that she knows more about the Sith than Finn does. Regardless, Finn doesn't want to hurt people, and he admits that that sounds ridiculous as a soldier, but when he lost his parents, the First Order took him in, gave him a home, and he was happy to defend it because all he saw around him as a child was war and chaos. But there's something rotting at the heart of it all, something he's tried to ignore for the longest time and just can't anymore. Satisfied, Vace releases Finn, and BB-8 receives an emergency signal from Poe. Rey implores Vace to help him, and at this point Vace throws her hands in the air, marching out to do just that, despite her obvious irritation, because this situation is rapidly getting out of her ability to control anyway. While she and BB-8 are away, Rey talks to Finn, showing great curiosity about the galaxy and divulging that she and her mothers used to travel often in their ship, the Truth Seeker. Finn correctly deduces that they're hiding, and upon asking her about that, Rey confesses that she doesn't remember the why or the what, just that Sulia said something dangerous was after them and she left to draw it away. She was supposed to come back when it was safe, and it's been 10 years. Poe is brought back alive, albeit with a badly injured leg, and he's happy to see Finn survive their impromptu escape. Leaving the boys at home, Vace declares that because the First Order will be looking for them, they need to leave, and she tells Rey to get the speeders ready while Aerox packs the ship. It hits Rey all at once that Vace means they are leaving. All of them. They're leaving Jakku. They head to Nima Outpost and actually go inside the town this time to buy supplies for the ship, but the First Order is already patrolling, and it's only a matter of time before Tito points Rey out to them as the one who took the BB-8 unit from him. This results in a speeder chase back to the canyons, where Vace signals for them to split, forcing their pursuers to do the same. Naturally, the chase goes poorly for the First Order, but the standout moment here would be Rey using a small jolt of force lightning to cause a crash.
Oh, I don't know how to feel on that one. I don't know about that one. That one doesn't quite... That one doesn't quite fit the bill for me. So, I think we have to be fair. I think we have to judge this rather than a kind of, hero's journey, Iliad and the Odyssey kind of style, rather than something along the lines of, say, episode 4, 5, 6. I would even argue 1 and 2. This is more akin to 3? This feels more akin to episode 3. Which isn't bad. I actually really like episode 3. I feel like we are definitely more action movie territory, where you're kind of just there for the ride. There's not really sections to kind of pause and get your bearings in, but I guess that's just the sheer amount of information that needs to get absolutely just blasted through in the beginning, right? I think that's a fair concession. Yeah, looking at this from an action movie perspective, I think it does fit a little better. I think that, if you're going for action movie things, you want to make sure you're establishing villain. You want to make sure that you are establishing stakes, characterization. Doesn't want to be a Sith, doesn't want to go do the thing. I think that. Yeah, speeder chases will going to be one, especially because we have speeders previously, which will lead into speeders being used previously. So now we have a speeder chase scene. I could see this leaning towards action movie territory, like Dead Space 2 over Dead Space 1, right? Not necessarily a 1-to-1, but Dead Space 2 is a lot more action-packed, right? Going through Tideman Station, dealing with the Tormentor, dealing with the tripod elevator, dealing with the meat walls underneath the government sector, right? Versus Dead Space 1, where it was a lot more atmospheric, and you had to, you could slow trudge through a lot of areas. You had to slow trudge through some areas, especially with the corruption was concerned, right? When you first meet the baby Guardians, how you have the 3-tiered elevator room, right? Yeah, and at the bottom, I think it's actually the first time you do meet a Guardian at the bottom of the elevator. I don't know, just things I've been thinking on from this. It definitely feels like they're leaning more into KOTOR and action.
I'd want to thread the line between what we've understood thus far to be dark side inclinations and the light, a balance in the Force, as it were. Returning to the old.
But we already have a separation on that. Plo Koon and Legends did utilize lightning, but of the light side variety. I think it's cool that we're trying to combine light and dark here. I wonder how much the concept of a gray Jedi influence it, despite a gray Jedi, as far as I'm aware, not being a canon concept.
Smuggler's Den, everyone gets loaded up onto the Truth Seeker, and TIE fighters are deployed to chase them down. Vace pilots while Rey and Finn man the turrets, managing to pick off their pursuers by weaving through the ship graveyard and finally escaping the planet. Quick note, as before they finished loading onto the ship, Rey would have grabbed a bunch of personal items from her room, including Force-related educational texts, lightsaber tools, and a holocron, a purple, gold-framed octahedron. This is Sulia's holocron that she left for Rey to one day open when she was ready. What does that
Suspense of disbelief, living on Smuggler's World. No smugglers came across things like this and or reported literal main character for doing effectively space wizardry. I do have a sense of disbelief there.
mean? You'll find out. The main points are that Rey still has some kind of mystery going on about her family history. She already knows she's Force-sensitive and has a guardian who has been training her, though her connection with the Force seems troubled somehow. Finn is much more conflicted about defecting, as he was a loyal soldier and believer in the First Order until his squadmate dying rattled him and he couldn't suppress his Force sensitivity anymore. Poe is with them from the start, rather than events playing out in such a way that he and Rey only meet each other at the end of the second film in the trilogy. What in the goddamn was that about? And overall, there's meant to be a sense that the First Order, while
It's been way too long. I was debating on watching the trilogy going into this, and I'm just like, nah.
similar to the Empire, is a totally different beast akin to Crusaders burning away the impure. This isn't just another authoritarian empire. There is a higher power driving them, and it is hungry.
Sure.
After the escape, the scene would shift to Ruin aboard the Finalizer in his personal chambers, meditating before the melted visage of Darth Vader's helmet. But instead of revering his grandfather, Ruin seethes at Vader's weakness, resenting him for allowing sentiment to sway him from his path. We see brief flashes of Ruin when he was still called Ben, of a temple in flames, of him cutting through fellow Jedi acolytes and facing his uncle Luke, eyes black, save for a silvery pinprick of light. Ruin shudders from the recollection, clearly unsettled, and hisses that he will be stronger than Vader, saying, "The Force shall free me." He's informed of the failure on Jakku, but doesn't throw a tantrum, more concerned with the confirmation that the mystery Cathar and human girl were obviously Force adepts. And
So, when we talk about Kylo Ren's tantrums, the reason that they make sense is because he is insecure. He is comparing himself to Vader. He can't control his emotions, right? So naturally, if we look at the other side of this, in which this proposed edit is along the lines of, right, his tantrums do not make sense, right? He would share more in common with Palpatine than, say, Vader Episode 3 going to Mustafar to take care of the Separatist leaders, right? So I think that this is a very good attention to detail.
he brings this to a holocall with Emperor Snoke Kolost, interrupting a conversation with Commander Armitage Hux. Their relationship is similarly disdainful, but he lets Hux finish, and we learn that the First Order is preparing to unleash something on the New Republic called Savage Dawn. Once Hux has left the conversation, Ruin cryptically informs Snoke that he believes an old enemy may have resurfaced. Meanwhile, Team Truthseeker is in hyperspace, and I'd make a point that space travel isn't shown as instantaneous, but still takes time, and isn't just the speed that is most convenient for the plot. So before they arrive at Takodana, there's some interaction between the characters allowing them to grow and connect. Finn investigates the ship and finds a locked door, only to jump out of his skin when Vace lowers herself out of a maintenance hatch right next to him, flatly confirming the locked door was her and Sulia's room. He's clearly intimidated by her, so makes an excuse to go and check on Poe in the medbay, and they talk about the escape, having a much easier rapport now that they aren't at risk of death. When Vace is asked where they're headed, she reveals that they are headed to Takodana to talk to an old friend of her wife. Poe is insistent on heading straight to the Coalition because the Republic is in danger, but Vace returns that it's been in danger for years from infighting, greed, and corruption. They need to...
I actually really like that this Vace character is kind of seen as a guiding hand. I mean, we see in media, like Ruby Volume 6, was it? Jin's reveal. So the reason why Jin's reveal worked, and the reason why, well, that's just a retcon, why you don't really see any sort of, rhetoric like that being thrown around, is because at that point, Jin is the like reliable narrator, right? Okay, we've heard this side of the story, this side of the story, this side of the story, that side of the story, and for some reason, that side of the story. Okay, you asked me the question of, who is Ozpin, why is this a thing, right? Cool, sit down, children, let me tell you a story, right? At that point, you're cutting through all the BS, you're cutting through all the lies, deceit, deception with your reliable narrator. Now, obviously, this is not a one-to-one, nor am I making the comparison that it is. What I am saying is tropes along the lines of having kind of that guiding hand or that reliable narrator can work, and they can work to really kind of move the story along a little bit, right? Clearly, her having access to a ship is a very less comedic and more grounded way to leave Jakku, right? This is, this feels like a better way to introduce the concept of Maz, right? You do absolutely lose the Harrison Ford and Chewbacca interaction, at least for now. Yeah, I think I like where they're going with this. I think that this is interesting. Well, considering it a complete rewrite, I think this helps move the plot around, and thus this Vace character, for all intents and purposes, is throwing up red flags to get ganked, right? Like we're pretty sure this is going to be a plot point that they're definitely going to get ganked. That this has to happen.
Repair the ship first, and she doesn't know or trust the Coalition yet, so they're going to someone she does. Besides, they only have enough fuel to reach Takodana, and it'll take a few days to get there. Finn tries to give the jacket back to Poe, but as in canon, Poe tells him to keep it, adding that it looks good on him, which flusters Finn. There's some bonding between Finn and Vace via ship maintenance and talking over weapons in the workshop when he can't sleep. He asks her why she helped them, and she admits that honor demands that you help people in need, and she's done a terrible job of that. She offers to teach him a Cathar card game called Zont to calm his mind, and they head off to the ship's galley. When Rey wakes up in the bunk room later, it's shown that Vace sleeps with a frown and a mouth guard, her jaw flexing as a chronic teeth grinder, and if you've ever had the displeasure of hearing the sound it makes when someone grinds their teeth while unconscious, you'll appreciate Vace's efforts to mitigate that. Rey spends most of her—
I think the subtext of the mouth guard would be lost on people. I think having something along the lines of, Anakin having nightmares from, episode 3, right? Nightmares about Padme. I feel that might be able to suffice in a capacity.
Time in Sulia's old study, which gives the impression of someone who spent a lifetime exploring all manner of cultures and unearthing history. In particular, Rey remembers helping her mother delicately clean an artifact, and Sulia is shown to be human, with similar features to her. When they finally reach Takodana, they meet with Maz, who in this version is a Gendai, because what is the point of having so many species in a setting already if you don't use them? It's clear there's friendly—
I don't know, I kind of liked Small Maz. I kind of liked, Dude, I'm so upset we never got the plot point. Not even the whole lightsaber plot point, but the whole union dispute thing, and, not being a recurring character after 8. Bro, I got robbed from my union leader. I'm so upset.
history between Maz and Vace, and she quickly sorts out everything they need for the ship. She also casually indicates that Vace will have her hands full with training Finn, tacitly revealing herself to be familiar with the Force even if she carries no lightsaber. She asks to speak with Vace alone, and outside, Finn nervously asks Rey what training with Vace is like, to which she reassures him, seemingly excited to see what he can do. The conversation between Vace and Maz turns dark and serious once it's just them, Maz referencing the last time Vace's family was here and what a horrible mess that was. She cryptically asks Vace if that was really the best solution, and Vace returns that we thought it would protect her, clearly referring to Rey and deeply conflicted about whatever that was. Maz warns that Rey's senses will only sharpen now that she's off Jakku, and it's only a matter of time before she realizes that something is wrong. Vace needs to tell her before that happens, which Vace acknowledges. But will she? Take a guess. Instead of arriving on Takodana because of some goddamn snitches, we cut back to Ruin addressing his knights.
There's me catching my self-censor. I've been watching way too much Aqua Teen Hunger Force recently. As someone who's never really seen it, I've been binging that. Oh man, it's been fun. Yeah, nope, not let that intrusive thought win.
Here, they would be fully trained Force adepts rather than ambiguously dark-sided mercenaries, and they would be more distinct as characters. Long story short, they act under Ruin's direct orders, and he orders them to support the deployment of Savage Dawn, while he heads off to Naboo. We're gonna start moving quickly now, because if I don't, this video will be 3 hours long. I am not ready for that yet, and this is the point where we really start to diverge from The Force Awakens.
Bold of you assume this video is not going to be at least near 3 hours. I miss when I could react to 15-minute videos. I've been getting a lot. I still have Wendigoon's Blood Meridian video that's just sitting in my watch later queue. Dude, that's gonna be like a 9-hour reaction if I don't do something to speed that up. I miss being able just to I miss the shorter videos.
Now that the team is no longer on a world weak in the Force, Rey starts to have scary premonitions and contorted flashbacks about a horrific darkness swallowing her whole and the blurry figure of Snoke attacking a family in a rainstorm, steadily revealing that this is how Vace lost her limbs and is the instigating incident behind their exile on Jakku. Rey doesn't remember being hurt from this event, but she does remember Sulia standing over her as if trying to heal her with the Force, looking tearful and apologizing to her. Vace begins teaching Finn in one-to-one sessions, showing him how to meditate, how to exert his will through the Force, and revealing to him the exact manner in which she was taught, using...
Okay, really quick, because I do have to bring up a couple numbers really quick. If we look at, let's go Return of the Jedi runtime, going to be about 90 or so minutes, right? 2 hours, 15 minutes. So then if we go to, let's go Revenge of the Sith runtime, 2 hours, 20 minutes. Okay, so roughly just over 2 hours, right? Just over that 120 minute mark. About what? 130, 150 or so, something like that, along that. If we go to Force Awakens, runtime 2 hours and 16 minutes. So already, historically, precedent by Star Wars, you have generally about 2 hours and 15 minutes or something like that. Revenge of the Sith does feel pretty long. That fight sequence in Mustafar is great. That's probably where the 5 minutes is coming from because, oh god, that fight scene is just, peak. It's so good. But if we go to something like Return of the King theatrical runtime, because don't get me wrong, I watch, I'm going to use AI in this one. I don't want to use it. No, let's not use AI on this. Let's go IMDb. IMDb is going to be saws along 3 hours. Like Return of the King, very specific. It was a long movie in theaters. It was long. Oh, I can't find it. Oh, I actually haven't watched Schindler's List. I need to actually watch that. Going with the rough ballpark of 3 hours, right? 251 minutes or so, right? Don't get me wrong, Lord of the Rings fans. If I start talking about Lord of the Rings, this will be a 5-hour reaction. I will not. I will not talk about Lord of the Rings this time because I will just drag out the time because I love talking about Lord of the Rings. However, this is not the norm. This is more of the norm. So all of this that we're discussing, realistically, does have to fit within a approximately 2-hour time frame across each film. So, yes, you do want action scenes. Yes, you want to move the plot along. But you also need to make sure that you're being realistic. Now here's the counter argument, though. Because, remember, Star Wars has novelizations. I hear the Revenge of the Sith novelization adds a lot of characterization to Anakin and Windu. And I think that's actually really cool. So I think we also have to establish here that not only are we going for a rewrite, we are clearly going for a rewrite as per the title. We are going for an action film, right? Action film trilogy, even. Could probably use some Michael Bay underwater rotating camera shots in here, 100%. But we also need to acknowledge, are we going the movie route or are we going the novel specific route? I think that with the movie, you're going to be cutting that really close. And I think that at a certain point, it is going to feel pretty choppy and maybe even disjointed on the big screen because it's a lot of good information, like I've said, but there's a lot of information to throw. With a book, you do have a little bit more time to pad out things. As chat points out, Return of the King, let's be honest, half the runtime was the 7 million endings. I actually like my 700 million endings, thank you very much. They also had to cut Scouring of the Shire, but I mean, I guess they kind of had to cut. No, I'm not falling for that trap again. I'm not doing it. I will talk about Lord of the Rings for the next 2 hours. Don't tempt me. It's like L5R. Whenever I talk about Legend of the Five Rings, I will talk about Legend of the Five Rings for the next 2 hours. I literally do not have the time to do that this time. However, leave a comment down below if you just want to hear me just hardcore tism about L5R or Lord of the Rings at some point. Maybe I'll do a stream on that. What was I talking about? Because once again, L5R just completely throws me out. Yes, endings. So it's gonna have to fall within those constraints. Assuming we're doing a movie trilogy, each of them are going to be approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes. And I think all the shots proposed so far would fit well within the time frame, especially considering the pacing of Episode 7, right? I think that all of these reasonably could fit. I think that you will start to run into an issue with pacing and certain shots being a lot heavier, not necessarily from like a moral standpoint, right? Like a moral ethics, content, but like it's just heavy for the amount of context that's being dropped on you, right? Like the Leia lightsaber argument scene from the beginning is like Force Unleashed 2 when you show up to Malastare. What are the Imperial codes from the sector where just the Imperial dude just shows up? Just John Imperial leader, 517, right? Just shows up and he's just like, I was expecting Lord Vader, right? It kind of feels like that interaction in a way to me. I don't know. I could also be reading too deep into this, which I do read into things a lot, right? Why are the drapes blue? I don't know, because the art is just like blue. It's not necessarily the agonizing, soul-crushing depression and the bleak outlook on life trying to veil reality from the author. Sometimes the curtains are just blue because the artist liked the color blue.
The words Ashla, Bogan, and Bendu to refer to the light, the dark, and the in-between, rejecting the extremes of both Jedi and Sith. She also confirms and challenges the propaganda of the First Order. During a group meal, it's commented on that Finn is strong.
What is this? What is this from?
Sulia and Vace were equals in physical combat.
It's gotta be KOTOR.
Sulia was far more proficient in her use of the Force through complex techniques and rituals. She was more of a sorcerer. When Rey brushes off Poe's curiosity by saying that she is nothing special and just strong enough to use the Force when she needs it, Vace does not reassure her otherwise, looking quietly uncomfortable. There's a conversation between just Finn and Poe when they get a drink later that reveals more about what the First Order tells its people versus what Poe is aware of, painting a clearer picture of the horrors they had to survive in the unknown regions, and how genuinely good it feels to be part of the First Order when your enemies are a sentient living contagion, soul-sucking reptilian zealots, and violent predatory slavers. There's hints during this conversation about Phasma having doubts in their mission, but it largely revolves around Finn and Poe getting to know each other better. Before they leave Takodana, Vace takes Finn and Rey to select crystals for their lightsabers, under the reasoning that things are only going to get more dangerous going forward and they will need these weapons.
I'm sorry, did we just arse pull actual kyber crystals? Okay, what kyber crystal lore are we using though? Are we using legends or are we using canon? Are we using I need to know going into something like this, what system are we using? Is it the one where they're more rare or less rare? The colors also do matter depending on which one you're looking at. There's that's one of those things that to 99% of people is just kind of a hand wave. Yeah, no, this makes sense. But then there's people like me who looked at the old Snoke's ring was allegedly a black kyber crystal, and what does that even mean? It's because I know kyber crystals have changed throughout the years, and that's where my contention lies.
Maz has a collection of suitable components in her vault, and they pick for each 2 pairs to fit a versatile hilt like the one Vace carries. It's worth noting that one of the crystals picked by Rey is the same type Sulia used, which leads to a vulnerable moment between her and Vace hugging and admitting how much they both miss Sulia.
Okay, so what I'm going to assume, a reasonable assumption here is that we're going to be going with the legends, where they're pretty common, right? I think that's a fair thing. I could also see a plot point if we're going with the legends. We're going with legends. With the legends plot points where red crystals could be synthetic. That would be a cool one for Rune to have, a synthetic crystal, which might lead into, because we've clearly been using the Kylo Ren imagery here, could lead into a more unstable artificial crystal. I could see that being a really good plot point.
When Finn and Rey assemble their lightsabers, it's done out in the wilderness where the Force is at its most balanced, with them meditating while Vace recites a code. From blood there is honor. From honor there is wisdom. From wisdom there is unity. From unity there is strength. In our strength there is a future, balanced and unbroken. Rey's lightsaber color is silver and ignites with a faint crackle of electricity, while Finn's is cyan and sounds like hot metal being quenched in ice water. Rey assembles hers here on Takodana, while Finn assembles his later on Dakar. For the real lore nerds in the audience, Rey has Durant Fire and Furkran crystals to reinforce her affinity for lightning.
Yeah, so I'll I'm lost on this one, Captain. I appreciate the explanation on that. I think this will cement legends for many people. Yeah. There's wiki entries for these.
And Finn has Lordian gemstones and recursion glass, lending to his protective and empathetic nature in the Force. Vace's primary, secondary, and tertiary crystals are Fond, Sapith, and Sigil. We briefly cut to see that the Knights of Ruin are on Hosnian, showcasing the disparity between those living on the surface and those below, and the disdain the Knights hold for the New Republic's hypocrisy. Team Truthseeker ships off to the Ileenium system, and on the way there, Poe asks for Rey's help customizing some new blasters in the work.
So here's my hot take on this, on the crystals, right? I think an interaction like that is good because it rewards you for having understanding of the source material and allows people to interact with potentially new things. But I think there is a point in which it could be seen as overload and a mass departure, right? What happens if, say, I don't know, Rey had a yellow lightsaber, maybe like the Temple Guards did in Clone Wars, which a lot of people would be familiar with, right, in the generalized audience. But maybe it like pulsed a certain way. Because remember, the Force Unleashed is what I'm pulling this from, right? We have crystals with different effects, and that's just purely it's not purely cosmetic. It's cosmetic, but there's also like a reason to it in game, a reason for it. But I mean, like, what about do it like the cyan, right? You know, make a stronger glowed blue one, right? You know, like have it be different, similar but different, right? So let's say you went with the standard green-blue, right? Finn being blue, Rey being green, right? But they either glowed a separate way, they had a slightly different color, right? And then for like, you know, your lore aficionados, they'll be able to tell you exactly what kyber crystal that's going to be. Absolutely. And to your average audience, they're going to be like, okay, so these new crystals are leading to new lightsaber variants, right? You're allowing your standard audience to connect with the material. Now, we had crystals of color all across the spectrum, right? Like, I know this, you know this, many people know this. A lot of people don't know that. Should they be vilified and or punished for not knowing that? Or should they, in a more mainstream capacity, right? We're coming back to don't put your important source material in some F-off like supplementary passage somewhere, right? Ease them into that. By film 3, sure, have a brown lightsaber, have a black lightsaber. Well, technically that's like dark saber territory, right? But you get my point, right? Like ease into this, especially if this is not going to be their permanent saber, right? You don't necessarily need to give the epic sword of awesomeness and butt kickery, right, to your protagonist in the first book. Your protagonist has, you know, a sword, maybe it has a heron mark on it, Wheel Time fans out there, and, you know, maybe the sword does really well, but something ends up happening, they're fighting a strong enough opponent that, you know, the sword ends up getting broken, right? And then you get into, you know, like kind of a training arc kind of thing, maybe in the next book, and then by book, you know, the finale of book 2, or even going into book 3, suddenly your character has the super awesome blade of badassery and butt kickery, right? Like, do you give your character the nuke spell right off the bat in an RPG? Or do you give them like fireball and or catapults and then build up to it, right? Then you build up into the super awesome wizard spell of delete that direction, right? Like there's a progress here. And I think that I could even see the plot point of here's your training sabers, right? Like kind of having training sabers, because having to earn things, I know this is such a foreign concept to many people nowadays, but having to earn things is a part of life, right? It's why I don't like being called. It's a subjective thing, right? When people call me like Lord or Sir or whatever, I haven't done anything to earn that, and obviously I can kind of see it's the joke, right? It's the joke. It's the funny. I do Renaissance combat, medieval combat kind of stuff, right? But like, if somebody were to actually like, you know, try to pin these titles on me, I haven't earned things like these. Earning thing, and people also want to see in media people earn things. Is that not a core criticism of why people say that Rey is a Mary Sue? Well, she didn't earn this. Now we're talking the same language. So people need to earn things, and it's okay to start on hand-me-downs. It's okay to start on certain things and build your way up to it. And by the end, then you have a hilt that's designed in a certain way for more of a defensive posture, and then you have crystals that tell, stories about the character, but you lean into that, right? You don't necessarily, drop it like it's hot, like Luke, I Am Your Father, which even then was the end of the second Star Wars film, right? Well, episode 5, right? But the second film in release, right? A New Hope, and then Empire Strikes Back. So I think that from the Kyber, I think this would be fine, but not first film territory. I like where they're going. I think that absolutely for your lore aficionados, this is prime territory. This is free real estate. But you need to make sure to catch the rest of your audience up first, right? Have a subtle hint to the deeper lore. And then by the end, it's I know exactly what that silver crystal is. Oh boy, let me tell you about that silver crystal. I'll tell you what, right? And a couple interactions from Lord of the Rings, I promise I'm going to keep these brief, that kind of reward external knowledge. In the extended edition, Aragorn singing about the tale of Beren and Luthien. There's going to be people who go, oh yeah, he was singing, but I don't know what he was singing about. People who read the Silmarillion be like, ah, yes, Tale of Beren and Luthien. One that I have not read all the way through, but does involve Sauron being both a vampire and a werewolf. Don't worry about that. It's just Silmarillion things. The Silmarillion is a trip, especially depending on which iterations of stories you hear about. Another would be, and everyone saw this because I'm pretty sure this is in the theatrical, Gimli requesting 3 golden hairs from Galadriel's head. Why is that relevant? Oh, well, it's because elves hate dwarves, right? Standard 30 audience, grew up playing D&D, understanding D&D, right? Sure, probably understands that, yeah, dwarves and elves don't necessarily get along. To those who've read the Silmarillion, or at least are aware of it, Fëanor did everything wrong. Fëanor was an individual. Fëanor did not get a single hair when he requested it from Galadriel. So for Gimli, son of Gloin, to receive 3 is just even 1. Not just 1, but 3 is unheard of. And that actually goes into repairing, damages wrought by it's what was it? One of the Silmarils tried to get crafted into a necklace by the elves. They gave it to the dwarves. This goes into I think it's the tale of Turambar, right? That whole arc. Morgoth was rough. I'm done talking about Lord of the Rings now. But I think I've illustrated my point. In other media, we like being able to be rewarded for having put in the extra time. Sure, it's optional, you could argue, but it's rewarding when we see our time, effort, and dedication get rewarded. Because then we can see things about, oh, well, Aragorn's singing about Beren and Luthien. This is why Gimli receiving 3 hairs is so monumentous. This is why in movie 2, end of movie 2, movie 3 status, why we're getting certain crystals and why we're getting certain colors and what those colors mean and how it represents the struggles of the character going into that point. And people are already primed into this from the first film. So I think from a pacing standpoint, I do think I take a little bit of issue with this. I'm curious to see if they keep the Luke lightsaber plot point in. I don't think this is geared towards this. I'm curious where they're going to go.
He's having trouble because all the tools seem to be designed for left-handed use, and they talk a little while she applies the customizations for him. Rey and her mother Surlia are both left-handed. If you're starting to put the pieces together, I am so proud of you. They connect over losing their mothers at a young age, and Poe shows her his mother's platinum wedding band that he wears around his neck, saying it'll go to someone special someday. Rey is a little overwhelmed by the conversation, and Poe apologizes, changing to another topic to keep her mind off things. There is a brief interaction between Aerox and BB-8, with the latter asking the former if he is a war droid. Aerox answers that his duty is to serve and protect the Vardanox family, and he is fully equipped to wage war should it be necessary. BB-8 observes that Aerox's design doesn't show up in any manufacturer catalog, asking if he is a custom creation, and Aerox answers that that's classified, causing BB-8 to roll back with indignation. Finn helps Vace set up a hydroponic shelf in the hangar bay and accepts Poe's offer to talk about his feelings if he needs to, but he spends most of the journey just trying to make himself useful. When they're close to their destination, Poe unintentionally upsets Vace by calling her and Rey Jedi, insisting that's what they are if they're going to fight the First Order and their Sith, and that hearing the Jedi are back will be a shot in the arm for people, but Vace refuses to accept the label. They are going to fight the First Order, but there's clear animosity shown towards being considered Jedi, and they both display an understanding of Sith and Jedi history, constantly throwing the galaxy into turmoil. Moving on. Team Truthseeker lands on Dakar, where the Coalition has a town called Haven, a fortified location where refugees running from the First Order can resettle and support the Coalition's efforts. The town itself is built on top of a forested mesa, with the IFC's headquarters built underneath. Poe brings them down to meet with General Leia, finally handing over the data chip and introducing his new friends. Finn is noticeably scared to introduce himself, but he does so honestly, and Leia takes his hands, calling him a brave man for running away from the First Order and thanking him for rescuing Poe. Finn affirms that he's here to fight for a better way forward. There's obvious tension when Leia turns her focus on Vace, but she welcomes them all regardless and leaves Poe to get them familiarized while she handles another matter. We learn through a tour from Poe that Leia founded Haven 10 years ago with help from friends she still had in the Republic. They're almost fully self-sufficient now. She built this place because she knew that she would need a base of operations separate from the Republic if the Empire ever came back, no matter what form that took. And when
That's very Leia. I like that. That is incredibly Leia. Just being able to be like, well, yeah, I built this after the Empire fell, just in case we needed a little bit of a space, right? I think this is more aggressively Leia and, you know, the best laid plans, right? Versus the aggressive introduction. I like this.
The Republic closed its doors to refugees, she was the one who took them in. They're brought back to Leia and given a mission to head to Naboo after the Coalition received a troubling report from Agent Amilyn Holdo. Yes, I'm rescuing the parts I liked from The Last Jedi and discarding the rest. Rose will make an appearance down the line.
Sure.
The team is equipped with comlinks, datapads, and a modified transmission board for the ship to let them communicate securely with the Coalition and head off to Naboo. There's a brief moment of understanding between Rey and Vace on the bridge as Rey expresses a need to help others, even if their main goal is to find out what happened to Sulia, and Vace agrees, confessing that she had forgotten what the point of having strength was. She put sheltering Rey above letting her grow. Strength for the sake of it, discipline without application, honor without means to test it, unity to a group of two. She allowed weakness into her heart because of fear, and Rey suffered for it. Rey accepts her words and reassures her mama that now they have a chance to do something worthwhile with their strength, and so will Finn. They arrive in the city of Theed on Naboo and leave Aerox to guard the ship, meeting Amilyn Holdo outside the spaceport. She still has her violet hair, because that was just a really bizarre thing to get hung up on, but she wears a dark blue jumpsuit with a grey utility vest and sandals, her belt holding a variety of tools and a blaster pistol. This version of Holdo is like if your hippie art professor and Miss Frizzle had a child with Jack Bauer, an outwardly friendly, compassionate, and very intelligent woman who has seen far too much to ever sit still when there's fighting to be done.
I mean, honestly, like, I personally didn't really care about the controversy, quote unquote, regarding Holdo. I mean, she she was the one in charge. She was the one who gave orders. Technically, Poe and Finn were the ones who were at fault. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a boomer. Maybe I just don't really care as much. Like, I don't know. Sure, you could argue her character was two-dimensional, but, like, sure, whatever, that's about it. For a character who, for all intents and purposes, wasn't even going to last the film, did they necessarily need, like, 3 novels explaining their backstory at the time? I'd argue no. I don't know. Just cool. Awesome. You do you, Holdo. Didn't really have an issue with the whole plot points. I had much bigger fish to fry, namely the kukri with episode 8, I assure you.
Poe's relationship with her is far more professional and positive here, as they've clearly worked together before. Amilyn explains that political unrest has gripped the Republic in light of damning information released on the HoloNet, sparking riots and talks of secession. So, no one is really paying attention to the reports of people going missing around Chorus, nor the fact that there are soldiers using stealth field generators creeping around the woods. Investigating Chorus reveals that some creepy robed figures are paying criminals to kidnap people and bring them to a place called Soren's Fall, an excavation site that turns out to be an old temple connected to Emperor Palpatine. Naboo was...
That would immediately get called as a retcon, though. I guess it depends how that's portrayed. I think that the old here is subjective if we're talking about, well, this is an old ancient Sith temple. Really? But I think if we're talking like, yeah, no, Palpatine because of his disdain for Padme, and to even cause potentially more hurt to Vader, constructed this Sith temple. Okay, sure. Then we can talk. I think that's a cool idea. I think old in context does matter here.
His homeworld, after all, it makes sense that he would have things hidden away here.
Yeah,
Infiltrating the
that
site,
too.
Poe and Amelin stay outside to sabotage the First Order's operations as they're using droids to retrieve artifacts from within the temple. Why? Because the vibes are rancid and non-Force users would have a terrible time in there, so it's up to Finn, Vace, and Rey to look inside. Rey is briefly distracted by the bust of an alien species.
As far as I'm aware, this is still book one, movie one status. There's a lot
That is humanoid in appearance, but has pointed ears and noticeable ridges, tendrils, and facial spurs, with ornate geometric jewelry affixed to the nose and cheekbones. I wonder what that's about. Anyway, deeper inside the temple, they find the abducted people reduced to ash and husks in front of a large, spooky door, clearly sacrificed as part of some ritual. Beyond the door is a vault filled with valuable relics stored away by Palpatine at the height of his power, and this is where the first fight with Ruin is had, because he's down here talking to another Sith called Lord Ralveg.
Okay, so this does take... This feels definitely very coincidental. You could argue will of the Force. Yeah, it would make sense for Palpatine on his homeworld to have a vault. We did explore this concept at least in Battlefront 2, EA Battlefront 2. Where Luke went around trying to find I think it was the Wayfinder that he found. I remember what he actually found. I still need to play that campaign because I never actually played it. But yeah, Palpatine just has vaults. That was also Episode 9 as well, right? Where to the left side of the room where his throne is, right? Where Rey ends up going in the movie. He just has vaults of just Sith artifacts around. That's just him. He's just a hoarder.
As soon as the fight starts, Vace decouples her lightsaber and throws one of the hilts to Finn so that he can defend himself, facing off against Lord Ralveg while she and Rey attack Ruin together. The duel is difficult, but Finn eventually gains the upper hand and forces Ralveg to his knees, telling him to surrender and trying to convince him that this war against the Republic was built on a lie. But while Ralveg almost looks like he agrees with Finn, he's stopped by darkness taking over his eyes until only a pinprick of silvery light remains. The visuals would distort and twist around him like the air is shivering, and the voice that comes out of Ralveg would only make that worse.
You cannot take them from me.
Ralveg then impales himself on his own lightsaber, and the weight lifts. Despite being outnumbered, Ruin would prove himself a deadly combatant, and the fight is ended by Finn getting the idea to bring the temple crashing down on top of him. This does allow them to escape, and they return to Theed believing that Ruin is dealt with, but they are not that lucky. Ruin drags himself out of the temple and returns to the Finalizer, ordering the bombardment of Theed and forcing the team into a mad dash to their ship. During the chaos, they pass by people looking for safe passage at the spaceport, and Rey convinces Vace to let them take who they can, resulting in a grueling moment where Amelin helps decide who gets to be saved, because the Truth Seeker can only hold so many people. With those they can rescue, Vace flies them out of there, leaving Ruin to intensify the bombardment of Naboo in their absence as he looks down at a strange, sinister amulet in his palm. We dramatically swipe transition to Hux and Captain Phasma observing the Republic capital world of Hosnian from the bridge of his Star Destroyer. The First Order has completed their blockade of the planet, and Hux opens a channel directly to the Senate, relaying his broadcast through the HoloNet so that every Republic world will see what is about to happen.
Are we going with was the Eclipse? I don't remember which one it was. It was the one from Legends that was a Star Destroyer after Return of the Jedi that had effectively a mini Death Star cannon on it. So instead of hollowing out a planet for Starkiller Base, we're effectively just going to Legends where every Star Destroyer has a portable Death Star beam, right? It's more low powered, but it still has it. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on it because at a certain point, right? Sure, you have things like that. I think the power scaling, like we talked earlier, gets a little wonky though. And you definitely have to fight around those things. I don't know. It depends how it's delivered. It depends if this is even where we're going in the first place. And it depends how the good guys, quote unquote, how the resistance actually plans to fight multiple tiny Death Stars. because it's kind of hard to mount a resistance if they go full on Inquisitor status and just decide that that planet should no longer just exist, right? I especially when you have holy fanaticism thing, right? I don't know. It's interesting to think about where this is going.
The New Republic in action. A gathering of hypocritical and self-serving bureaucrats hungry for a return to a time when they could grow apathetic to the needs of their citizenry. You murdered our forebears, drove us into the dark unknown, but unlike you, we evolved, we adapted, we learned from our mistakes and grew stronger for it.
I'm operating under the assumption that nobody knows what Star Wars is. You didn't see 4, 5, 6 until 2020. I knew about the lightsabers and kyber crystals as a child a decade prior. Sure. I also come from the era, I'm sure many people do as well, where being a nerd and engaging in anything like this was bullyable. Like, John Random doesn't necessarily have the understanding, right? There needs to be a middle ground. Yes. So if you make a piece of media and it's so what's the word I'm looking for? It's so specialized, right? It's so, if I make a video about strictly L5R, right? Let's be honest, chat. Let's be honest. Who wants to watch me? Who wants to watch a video on Legend of the Five Rings? I love it. That's not me dissing it. Realistically, it's a hyper niche thing. If I were to make a good faith Star Wars piece, right? Let's say I was to make a video talking about, why I think Obi-Wan is a good character, right? Why would people want to watch that when we could just listen to the 500th video complaining about insert talking points here, Kathleen Kennedy, etc., 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 right? But on the other hand, you don't want to make it so generalized that you alienate your audience. There is a balancing act here. You want to be open, you want new people to come in as much as people will say, gatekeep, go girl boss to everything. It's a respect thing, right? Like, you go into something seeking to learn. Why is it this way? Versus, I'm going to inherently change this because I don't like this, right? Like, I don't know. I come from an era at this point that feels like it's long gone. Was a very successful movie series? Sure. I mean, yeah, we can argue objectively Star Wars was very successful, right? But there are a number of people who aren't going to know about kyber crystals. There are a number of people who aren't going to know the deeper... Me, right? I've talked this whole time, right? The 2 kyber crystals mentioned and what they meant. Dude, I had no idea what that was. Like, sure, for people who actively intake the lore, for people who are like, so I've done Star Wars for the past 30 years. Sure, awesome, right? And you should feel validated for understanding that information. When I, as somebody who intakes a number of things, look at that and go, bro, like, I knew they had meanings. I didn't know it was this deep, right? Clearly not everyone's on this same page. I would even argue further that, sure, people know kyber crystals exist. Do they know how they interact with the lightsaber, right? Like, I'm trying to be fair across the spectrum here, because when you talk about something like Star Wars, you're going to have brand new people. You're going to have people with familiarity with this. You're going to have people who've, done this on and off for a number of years and really love it. And then you're going to have the hardcore super fans. Like, how do you reasonably make a product that caters to everybody? You don't. You make what concessions you can, shortcut what things you can, and ultimately just write the best story you can, right? Like, note, like even in this, right? Even with what's her face, Vase training Finn, right? Notice that it didn't have as much emphasis as her training Rey or something like that. Why is that? It's almost like it's a relevant shorthand because we know Vase can train these things and thus requiring less time to cover that plot point. Sure, as an acknowledgement point, this is happening, but it's a relevant shorthand. Like, I don't know. It's a hard one for me to like dive into because it needs to be fair, right? And at the end of the day as well, from the amount of commentary that I've seen regarding Star Wars, even from fans, quote unquote, the understanding just isn't there, right? Once again, we said earlier in this video that people go, Palpatine would never do this. Palpatine would never come back. That is a disingenuous statement, to say the least. How he came back, sure, let's have a discussion about that. But that he wouldn't do this to begin with? Okay, now we're in Delulu land.
Where you leave the vulnerable and destitute to flounder on their own because of the cost, we lift them up. Where you allow vices to grow out of control and even dare to profit from them, we do not tolerate such pointless self-destruction. To encourage such is to shirk responsibility, to leave your people without purpose, without voice, constantly chasing after money, enough to eat, enough for shelter, enough to live. Our people are one, united in purpose, in voice, in the sheltering void of our great Dark Mother. And while he speaks, a thick green vapor begins to flood the Senate chambers, causing an immediate panic as those hit first begin to choke and convulse. So bear witness to the last days of the Republic. Bear witness as we finish what our forefathers started. Bear witness to the savage dawn.
I think that as much as we'd like to relate this to the Dioxys gas from 1, I think that especially when you have F off Disney money and F off like advertiser money that's in Disney, I guarantee you something like this would absolutely get shot down. I think it's because remember, pew-pewing aliens in games is perfectly fine for a T rating, but the moment it's like you're pew-pewing other things, Wolfenstein status, okay, whoa, you're looking at least an M rating, M17, right? Like, what's the other one that I heard of? Cabela's games? I think it was Cabela's, allegedly. Something about referring to firearms in games as weapons. No. They're not weapons. They are tools. They're implements, right? I guarantee you there are going to be some form of censors here. Do we get lesser media because of it? Sure. I could argue that. I could see a good faith argument in that. But like a scene like this, especially without a warning, could potentially traumatize a non-0% of the audience, right? Don't get me wrong, I can take some pretty heinous stuff, okay? You've seen my horror binges on Kip Reacts. You've seen some of the stuff we've reacted to, right? Some of the awful people that just exist in the world, right? But, like, I think that as people were already familiar with the Death Star laser, right? I think that that was a relevant way to do that. I think even just having a tinier one attached for a localized blast on Star Destroyers, I think would be completely fine. I like where we're going with this. I like the dark and gritty nature of this. I don't see it ever being in a Star Wars film.
Now, what has the First Order done here? They've unleashed a variant of the rat ghoul virus. For those of you who don't know, rat ghouls are basically space werewolves, mindless, ravenous monsters that can turn you into one of them with a single bite or scratch. I find this more horrifying than wasting Ilum by turning it into Death Star 2 Electric Boogaloo and dusting 5 worlds we have no connection to. Returning to Dakar, the Truth Crew are informed about what happened to Hosnian, and that Ruin nuked several of Naboo's cities off the map after they left, which horrifies Amilyn. At the very least, there's a small, sweet moment at their return when Leia hugs Amilyn in relief, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear and remarking that she was always good at escapes. Make of that what you will. Because Vace recognizes the Ratghoul virus in action and knows some of the history behind it, Leia tasks them with seeking out whatever countermeasures the First Order is using to protect its soldiers from the virus. When Poe asks about the data chip and if it had any information about the Savage Dawn project, Leia denies this, revealing that it showed them proof of the First Order funding pirate attacks on the Republic. It isn't a complete waste, however, as it also carried a wealth of battle plans and ship movements that will help the Republic defend itself now that the First Order is openly attacking.
Sure. I mean, I kind of like that First Order is just doing zombie things. I mean, to be fair, from a general audience perspective, oh, cool, this is just, Raccoon City. This is just Resident Evil Grats. We now have zombie virus horror thing in there, right? To which obviously there is going to be people, clearly comics, in regards to what the rat ghoul virus is. I myself am ignorant to what this is, if I'm being completely honest. It also makes me wonder what the end goal is, because once you start dealing with biological warfare like that, it becomes a free fire zone for everybody. And if the goal is conquest, like, that becomes an issue trying to retake an entire infected place place of land, right? It was in the Clone Wars. I remember that one, but this was the rat ghoul virus, which is, I don't know, man. I'm gonna defer to the audience on that one. I don't know. I think it's interesting to say the least. I don't know about zombie Star Wars, if I'm being completely honest. I think at this point we're definitely cruising for that R restricted rating, and that's fine. Like, if we're treating this like an R-rated movie, I think that's fine. I mean, this also makes the relevant disclosures about the content make a lot more sense. R-rated action movie Star Wars starring zombies.
Before they can leave, Leia speaks to Vace privately as one unorthodox practitioner of the Force to another, wherein Leia warns Vace to be careful because they will almost certainly run into Ruin again, and this is where it's confirmed that Ruin is Ben Organa, her son. Vace is respectful and gentle when she asks Leia if they want her to bring him back to her, but she refuses to ask that of anyone, only that they learn everything they can about these new Sith. Surely you've felt it. That distant, tenebrous thing at the edge of perception. Once again, the hungry, dark thing behind the First Order is referenced, Vace through her fateful encounter with Snoke, and Leia through her son's fall to the dark side. She blames herself for not realizing what was coming until it was too late, and when Vace tells her it isn't her fault, Leia asks if she would be so kind to herself in the same position. No. We are often crueler to ourselves than we would ever be to others. But I can be kind to you. Before they leave, Vace has Finn construct his lightsaber and has him meditate before doing so that he can filter his emotions into the blade without tipping too far in either direction. The point, as Vace was taught, isn't to channel only your negative or positive feelings, but to channel all of yourself and create a true extension of one's being. They spar afterwards, with Vace gently but firmly correcting his form, and at the end, when he thanks her for taking him under her wing, Vace affirms that he deserves to live, and that he is not his people's atrocities. Now, finer details fall off at this point, as that's as far as my final draft version of events got, but as I mentioned before, I made sure to plan this all out in full so I could foreshadow things and build up to character moments and plot developments.
Relevant.
Imagine doing that for a multi-part project in an IP worth billions. Imagine!
No, I gotta agree with that one, personally. Like, I think there was a through line. I think the through line made sense, but it's been described to me, and I honestly resonate with the sentiment, that the first 40 minutes of episode 9 was quite literally undoing events from episode 8. The fact that there was this battle of, it's Donald Duck, Daffy Duck, like, Who Framed Roger Rabbit piano battle status between the two directors. And remember, what's his face wasn't even supposed to come back for 9. Like, wasn't it the Game of Thrones double director tag team duo? Weren't they supposed to do 9? And then they got canned because of, I think it was Game of Thrones season 8. So then they had to beg what's his face to come back. I can never remember his name. Like, it's wild, because this feels like a management thing. This feels like an upper management, like, thing in its entirety. I think that is valid criticism. I resonate with this criticism. We expect better from a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Abrams, thank you.
From here, Team Truthseeker would head to Taris. It was the most likely place for the First Order's viral source that Vace could think of. On the way there, we cut to the chaos unfolding on Hosnian, a scene straight out of a zombie apocalypse as people turn into monsters and chase down the uninfected with
fast zombies!
Vigor. But we would also see that the First Order marches among the chaos, protected by scent blockers and the presence of collared rat ghouls who have been heavily experimented on. These stand upright, their hands have been amputated, and extensive cybernetics protrude from their skulls. They seem to act like overlords, directing the lesser rat ghouls according to the commands of their Sith handlers. The ripples in the Force created by this concentrated deluge of fear and death brings us back to Finn, who vomits after being disturbed from sleep. This leads to Rey and Vace helping him meditate, holding hands to keep each other anchored. And they're joined by Poe and Amilyn because even though they aren't Force sensitive, the knowledge of what's happening is more than enough to disturb their sleep as well. There'd be a little bonding moment between Rey and Amilyn in the workshop later where we learn that Amilyn is ambidextrous, and she comments that left-handedness is uncommon in both humans and Cathar. We learn from this interaction that Sulia is responsible for the utility-focused design of the lightsabers they use, but Rey...
Okay. You want to talk about moments? This is a George Lucas episode 2 Anakin with the pear moment. I'm going to be seen as insensitive here, and I apologize. I don't know if I give a shit if a character is ambidextrous or not. Like, call me a simplistic movie-dwelling mongrel, if you will. I probably deserve it, honestly. It's because I don't have a lot of the KOTOR-isms. I don't have a lot of the expanded Legends context and canonicity to be able. Like, I'm looking at episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this is episode 7, right? That's what I'm looking at, and I would argue that's what most people going to the theater are going to look at. You will have your portion of the audience who has played SWTOR. You will look at your portion of the audience that has at least engaged with the comics as a kid and stuff like that. Like the whole Imperial Guard thing, right? Like the whole Imperial Guard plot. Yes, I'm aware it could be a plot point. I'm aware that it very much is going to be a plot point. I think we need to be fair though. This is what, because remember, there was merit to the pear scene, right? Was the pear scene not discussing? I'm trying to remember what they were discussing on it, because Anakin was, I think, discussing the Jedi and love, right? Like they were like Anakin on the refugee barge going to Naboo with Padme in episode 2 was talking about how the Jedi are encouraged to love, so to speak, because, you know, attachments are forbidden, right? Pretty good scene. Then you get to the pear scene of them just like flirting with each other, and it's like, I've heard that described as a Lucas-ism, and that's why I latch on to that being a Lucas-ism. It could entirely be him. It could entirely be someone else. I personally do not know. Yes, this does potentially set up things, and most likely will set up things. A scene like this in the movie is going to read the same to me as the pear scene. It's going to absolutely be, what do you call it? The scene where, once again, episode 2, where you have Anakin riding on top of the funny yacht creatures, right? And then he falls off. Him and Padme roll around as they're laughing, and then they have a heart to heart in regards to politics, right? In regards to being a senator, and people should be made to agree. Well, that's just authoritarian, Anakin. He's just like, well, people should be made to agree, right? Sure, yes, that is a characterizing moment, and we see that Anakin going into Vader is an incredibly authoritarian individual. But how many people tune out that scene? How many people look at that scene and go, I'm kind of not into it. Kind of not into all this. Can we get to Geonosis already? And I think that's where I'm coming from on this. Yes, absolutely. From an artistic perspective, from a literary perspective, absolute cinematography, we are absolutely looking at something that is definitely additive to the character. Me, I kind of go, yeah, that sure was a scene. It's going to pay off later with the use of the second hand, but I don't know. Just to me, Anakin effectively says dictatorships are awesome in that scene. 100%. Yeah. I don't know. This is one of those scenes to me that reads like the pear scene. Like, you acknowledge it, you acknowledge what's said in the pear scene, and then it's like, then it comes up kind of later, or like the scene where they're riding on the creatures and Anakin just is like, yeah, no, people should be made to agree. They should be forced to get together, rah, 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 authoritarianism, rah, 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 dictatorship, right? And then, obviously Darth Vader happens. And it's like, sure, yeah, that was a scene. That definitely was a characterization moment. So, I apologize if I'm insensitive, especially to the person behind this. I do not mean disrespect. To me, as a kind of a knuckle-dragging mongrel, I would compare it to scenes from episode 2, personally.
Doesn't have an answer when Amilyn asks her where Sulia learned this. She can't remember. Finally, we'd also see another training moment between Vace and Finn to reinforce his preference for defensive combat and his empathic abilities, which reveals that he has the Force ability of psychometry. This means he can pick up on emotions and memories tied to objects or places. Now, because it's been thousands of years since Darth Malak blasted it to hell, the planet-wide city of Taris has been rebuilt, though it has far fewer levels, and there are a lot of open circles where wilderness reigns unchecked and the ruins of what came before just barely peek through. These are hunting reserves where people come from far and wide to prove themselves against the deadly, mutagenic nature of Taris' fabled Undercity. See, below the surface, there's an extensive, dangerous, and labyrinthine network of natural tunnels, ancient city layers, cave systems, and shipwreckage, which all...
So, okay. Reservation, and this does tie into the plot, the points we've made prior about... And I get it. I get that people are tired and frustrated with media that seems like it's dumbed down or made simplistic. I can respect that. I understand where the frustration comes from. Where was this in episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Because here's the thing. By this logic, right? By this logic, Halo 7, let's say. Halo 7 comes out and Master Chief is kicking butt with the Didact. How many people are going to go, Kip, he what do you mean? He died in 4. No, he did not. Do you remember what he fell through at the end of 4? Well, yeah, Chief and him had a fight at the end of 4. Cortana kind of wrapped him up, kind of had, and then Chief, slammed a funny grenade into him, and then he fell over into the funny space hole. Remember what the space hole was? I don't know. Oh, it was almost like it was a slip space portal, and that led to a Halo ring. To which I've literally told this to people when I've streamed or in chat, and they've said, "What do you mean that was a slip space portal?" Because remember, we don't see the Didact again. We don't see the Didact after that point in the main Halo games. 5, we go without the Didact. I think it's specifically the Didact, if I remember correctly, is that one that we dealt with in 4. It was a comic, if I remember correctly, where Blue Team goes to this Halo ring, deals with the, and then they end up going to fight the Didact, who's weaponized part of the Sentinel defenses of the ring against them. The monitor of that installation had an issue with the Didact because the Didact broke his promise, and then Chief ends up fighting the Didact 1v1. The Didact gets composed, right? Because remember, that was a whole plot point in 4. The Didact gets composed, which, from my understanding, watching Installation 00 videos, he should have been immune to being composed. And then he had a book literally late 2024 about his redemption arc. But here's the thing. So at this point, yeah, we should have Halo 7, and Master Chief should just be talking butt, and talking to and kicking butt with the Didact, right? You see how it gets confusing for people when you have big plot points like this outside. And that's not to say that you can't introduce things, right? Clearly, the Death Star was literally introduced in episode 4. Clearly, we had the introduction of a dark side nexus on Dagobah in episode 5. Episode 6, we had the Death Star 2. We introduce things all the time, and it's fine. I think when you start to do things like this, or you know what this is similar to? What this specific interaction is similar to? The island from episode 8. Why was the island relevant? Oh, well, something ancient Jedi here. Okay. That's cool. What's the delivery, though? And this is the thing. It can work on the assumption that you're able to get all of this information across in a way that is non-intrusive, is natural, and any mongrel knuckle dragger is able to understand it. Now, I'm not saying, to be like, and this, dear children, is... No, I'm not saying to dumb it down to a certain degree, right? But your delivery absolutely matters, right? It's almost like we've talked about delivery this entire time. Palpatine coming back's delivery is what's suspect, what's in question here. If there's, 100% reason for this to be here, I'm all for it. How do you... and we can clearly explain it in a video as this is why this is important. How do you explain this to me as somebody who has done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and has played a couple things like Force Unleashed, right? How do you explain why this is relevant? And sometimes you don't have to explain why things are relevant, right? Once again, Lord of the Rings, something something Gimli 3 hairs, something something Feanor, right? Doesn't need to be explicitly explained, but for a plot point like this, how do you explain it, or do you make the cognizant choice to not explain it? And if you don't explain it, are you okay taking the risk that your audience does not know what the importance of that is? Is it so integral to the plot that missing the context inherently changes, right? Changes the delivery in its entirety, right? You can go the whole Lord of the Rings series, the movies, without ever reading the Silmarillion. I have not read it. I've watched many people who have read it. I've watched many pieces on it. I've watched many pieces on the extended lore, Dane Ironfoot, etc., right? But generally, anybody will be able to pick up the Lord of the Rings trilogy and be able to watch it just fine front to back. And that's what your main series is going to be. So the Didact, reasonably, probably can't come back into mainline Halo games. Because I'm sure, I don't know what the ending of the book was specifically, but like, he was written out in 4. You had the delivery. You said, this is what we're going to do. Didact fell through funny slip space portal. And then we move on to Halo 5, jump skip 2 years, going into Jewel Mdama, events of the Created, etc. And then another time skip in Infinite, right? Like, that's a whole rabbit hole in itself, right? But I feel like I'm trying to make my point as, it's not necessarily about dumbing down the context. It's, does it matter? If it does matter, how do you deliver it in a way that is going to be received well and to make your audience really care about it, right? See point about ambidextrous, hand movement prior, right? Like how do you deliver this? Because we can sit here on a video, absolutely, and I can have chat explain why this planet is great, why this planet makes complete sense, right? I can have chat explain to me, and the original uploader explain, XYZ ABC about the design decisions that went into it, and that's all good information. But how do you condense this into that 2.5 hour maximum time slot? That becomes the question.
Combines into a damp, subterranean, bioluminescent jungle full of countless dangers. They try to find information in the city archives, but there's shockingly little about rat ghouls, and after asking one too many questions, the group is suspiciously escorted out, forcing them to look elsewhere. Unfortunately, Darth Ruin and Captain Phasma arrive on Taris without any hostilities because it turns out the government already had a quiet agreement with the First Order regarding research expeditions into the Undercity, and they were already planning to secede from the New Republic once the war started. Poe and Finn go to the Teresian Hunters League and speak to Huntmaster Bozak, an old Trandoshan who tells them that rat ghouls are a horror story to keep young reckless hunters from delving too deep, though he adds that if there are rat ghouls in the Undercity, they're so far down that it would be suicide to go after them. Amelin gets them into contact with an information broker, and through working with him, the gang learns more about the First Order's operations on Taris, from capturing people in the lower city to test viral strains on, and mutilating innocent people, to the fact that this all started 5 years ago, something that infuriates Poe. During this time, Vase continually senses something on the planet, saying that it's far below the surface, and whatever it is terrified, and that the only reason she can sense it is because it has some kind of connection to the hungering darkness. While they're busy attacking the First Order test sites, we see Ruin meet with a room.
Okay, I just skipped ahead. I thought we were going to be in, Starkiller Base status, like we're going to Starkiller Base. We have all of this left for episode 7. And then episode 8 feels like it's just Cliff Notes. Episode 9 feels like it. This is a long section. I am very curious if there's a proposed how this fits into play and where they actually end this. I think it's also front-loaded because this is having to really set the tone. Yeah, that makes a little more sense.
Of dissident politicians who are very much against aligning with the First Order, and with perfect calm, Ruin kills them in a force ritual that causes the sinister amulet he took from Naboo to start glowing with a unhealthy inner light. Surely this isn't a tool that will help him later. Eventually, Team Truthseeker discovers that the so-called Muir Site 1, named after the Sith Lord Carnus Muir, who created the rat ghouls forever ago, is deep within the Undercity, and they manage to convince Huntmaster Bozak to guide them, because Trandoshans might be known best as brutal slavers. He came to Taris to hunt and live well, something the First Order threatens. It takes time to reach this last site, and things get worse above ground as they descend. The people of Taris are divided about the First Order, and this leads to riots and crackdowns. When they finally reach their destination, Rey and Finn can feel the same thing as Vace, a bundled collection of terrified entities held within the facility. And there's only one reason the three of them would sense that so clearly. The individuals being held are also Force-sensitive. If you've played Star Wars The Old Republic and you remember a very specific quest on the Imperial side of Taris regarding rat ghouls and a Jedi holocron, you know where this is going. They infiltrate the site thanks to Amelin's slicing, and once she has access to their systems, she reveals the gruesome process by which the First Order turns a special breed of rat ghouls into swarm masters. They even find one in the middle of this process, interrupting a surgery in the labs. It's out cold and restrained, muzzled, with multiple thin rods sticking out the back of its open skull. It has big dark eyes and catfish-like barbels on its face, with sensory pits running along the midline of its body. It's revealed to us that these are called neck ghouls, a highly evolved offshoot that isn't contagious, reproduces naturally, is Force-sensitive, and also sapient.
Is it bad that I just look at this and I just think of Corpus from Morrowind? I'm about to hear Dagoth there whisper sweet nothings into me.
They were living in the depths of the Undercity all this time until the First Order discovered their existence and began raiding their settlements with the help of the Sith. Turning them into swarm masters means lobotomizing them and using them like amplifiers for the handler's will. That's why Vace could sense them first. She could feel the hungering void being forced onto their minds through this procedure, through the domination under their Sith commanders. Naturally, being our heroes, the team decides to find the remaining neck ghouls rather than destroy the place and run. Talking to the captives confirms that they are indeed sapient, and all they want to do is get away from this place and disappear again. They never wanted to be found. They know even if they can't transform people, no one will care.
So hear me out. Hear me out on this. Would this play better as a movie? Or would this play better as an MMO expansion? Would this play better in 2.5 hours as Star Wars Episode 7? Or would this play better as effectively, like, I don't know, like a Dawn Trail like update for a Star Wars game, right? I feel like for a game, this is baller. I feel like being the direct successor to Episode 6, when we do have plot points like the Yuzhong Vong, Palpatine going to the middle of the galaxy to do Sith shenanigans, when we have Abeloth, things like that in Legends. I think that this is a very ambitious rewrite. I like the spirit of it, and I feel like it would work infinitely better as a full MMO expansion.
The greater galaxy will see are monsters.
Or a TV show.
It's worth noting that Vace looks unsettled about this sentiment. The team, of course, sets them free. Returning to the surface, Rey has a nightmare about Snoke, Ruin, and the hungering void behind them, something Vace cannot explain to her because she doesn't know what it is either. The information broker gives them the location of the last Muir site, a pharmaceutical facility in Sector 8, the Tarisian government's official biomedical research and development hub. This final mission requires the team to split apart, bringing BB-8 and Aerox with them this time to help carry it out.
I think I agree. I think for a movie, I think there's so much in this already. Like, reasonably, you could have probably ended on... like, when... doing what is it, rat ghoul virus? I'm sorry about names. I'm trying. Throwing that as kind of the Star Killer base kind of thing, and then maybe going and dealing with the problem, having a showdown with Darth Ruin. Sure, awesome. I think at that point you've kind of like similarly Cap 7. This would have to be over 2.5 hours to pace things properly. That's fine. You just have to remember increased production costs. You have to remember people are going to see 5 hours, and that will actively turn people away. The amount of supplemental material that's going to have to go along with this as well. Like, maybe, I don't know, maybe they release an enhanced edition KOTOR before the movie launches because, hey, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Or, I don't know, you have a new Battlefront game by EA, and so, it has something in the campaign that kind of alludes to a little bit of a plot point going into the movie, such as a reference to, I don't know, certain vials of disease strains, right? That kind of thing, right? Get people hyped up, because marketing in itself is going to be that ecosystem, right? It's going to be that web that interconnects everything to hype it up for this, right? That the companies do it all the time, do they not? So I think I think this would make a banger TV show, though. I'm not even like upset. I'm not even like against it being a continuation. Like, I think this is great. I think this is great as a TV show. I don't think it's the episode 7 follow-up, though. Not with the... here's the thing, right? We can have the depth, but let me ask, right, lore aficionados, people who have been in this, hobby far more than I have, right? And let me even ask the author directly, right? Let's say tomorrow Disney released this. Let's just say tomorrow, right? But they had to make certain cuts. They had to make certain edits to make it more, friendly for advertisers and stuff, right? Make sure they keep their PG, even, going into the PG-13 rating, right? If the information was mishandled, the characterization wasn't done properly, or the pacing was too fast, do you think that you would have an issue with it? I think a lot of people would, in good faith, answer yes. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that what you're doing is being respected, right? Like, someone coming into L5R, as I've discussed before, and just being like, well, Shadowlands should be a clan. Okay. What are you predicating this on? Well, I just came in, heard Shadowlands became the Spider Clan. I disagree with it inherently. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to go over here and talk about, I don't know, a Tucson Uchi or something like that. I'm going to go talk about the Hante Dynasty. I'm going to go talk about literally anything else, right? I'm going to leave that conversation. If I talk to you about legally distinct medieval weapon that smashes things, and I talk about some blueberries, if you will, and say that, well, I disagree with, Red Scorpions being a successor chapter to blueberries. Okay, Kip, what are you predicating this on? Well, I just don't think it fits. Have you considered not? Would that not be considered disrespectful? I think it would be considered disrespectful. Like, we want to make sure things are being respected. Sure, absolutely. Relevant shorthands, relevant shortcuts, being able to deliver the most amount of information in the least amount of time that makes sense for someone having to sit, because someone has to sit through this, right? People can and will just walk out of a theater if the movie is bad enough, right? I cannot imagine, to a lot of the community, I cannot imagine a greater disgust moment if Disney did like something to follow up KOTOR and completely just shat the bed. Do you think that would make a lot of people very unhappy? Can be cut after the fight with Rune and reunion with Leia. Plan of Discovery is there. Right. I think at this point we are running a little long. I think that we are trying to have similar story beats in a certain aspect to Episode 7 as base, because we've made reference to Maz Castle. We've made reference to going somewhere else, like going to Naboo, going into Palpatine's Sith Goon Cave, his hoarding stash on Naboo, having a ruin fight with a big reveal. But then we go into the rat ghoul virus, and then we go into this planet now, and we still have. So it is currently 51:52. This is still going to about 58 minutes and 46 seconds. We still have a lot of development left. And I think that's why I keep reiterating, right, through repetition, how does this fit into a 2.5 hour block? Would this not make a better TV show? Would this not make a better MMO expansion? Would this not make a better game? Would people feel respected by it? I think that's really the question that comes out here, because I think this is good content. I'm learning things. As combative as I may seem, I'm learning a lot. And I'm also asking questions that I feel reasonably people would be able to either dispel, or it makes people think about things, right? Because as it turns out, I don't have all the answers. I don't. I've told you my thing has been episode 1 through 6 with some supplemental materials like Force Unleashed. I am the exact person that I keep talking about throughout this entire video. The person with familiarity with Star Wars, or unfamiliarity with certain concepts in their entirety, that would go to see a numbered entry, episode 7, and certain concerns and confusions I would have. I am that guy that would go, yo, I'm sorry, What is the Force dyad? Did I miss something in episode like 6 that I completely just missed? No? That's just an episode like 9 thing? And some supplemental material? Okay. Not a good feeling, right? I'm sure plenty of people were caught off guard by the dyad thing, even though it was mentioned in expanded media. That's what I have an issue with.
Amelin slices into the facility systems to cause distractions and unlock doors for the others, and Aerox causes more direct distractions in the form of waging war on the outside of the facility, showcasing exactly what the otherwise dry and devoted droid is capable of when given a reason. Finn uses his familiarity with First Order protocol to trick the workers of the facility into evacuating before things get worse, reinforcing that he cares what happens to the people they're fighting. As they descend to the sublevels, they go over what the plan of action is once they're down there. Poe, Finn, Amelin, and BB-8 will go to the vaccine testing labs and storage to grab what they can. Vace and Rey will split to sabotage the twin generators that run this place and bring it down after them. Finn's team makes it to their target, but they have to contend with entrenched troopers being led by Captain Phasma, pushing them back until they're defending the entrance to the vaccine vault. When all the stormtroopers are down, Phasma is the one who yells traitor and engages Finn in melee, her armor capable of taking direct blaster fire. She proves to be the superior combatant, having more experience than him, but when she knocks him to the ground and lifts her weapon, she hesitates. Poe manages to shoot the weapon out of her hands and Phasma is subdued. Finn gets to talk to her, telling her that she taught him better than this, expressing disappointment and grief that she would stand by what the First Order unleashed on Hosnian, demanding to know where the honor was in that. He doesn't seem to get through to her at first, but when they have trouble unlocking the vault, Phasma quietly gives them the door code before freeing herself and escaping. Instead of chasing after her, the team focuses instead on grabbing cases of the vaccine. Meanwhile, Rey plants a charge on the generator she's supposed to hit, only to be confronted by Ruin. She immediately calls out to Vace.
I am going to also, this is going to be that controversial meta element. There is no way that this movie would not be controversial because vaccines. There is, look, I think we can all be fair. We can all be reasonable adults. And we can be like, yeah, I mean, honestly, this, I don't see why people have an issue with this. I don't. People are dumb. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. People are dumb. This movie would instantly garner controversy because of the quote-unquote use of vaccines. And I think that is a very depressing meta commentary on why something like this probably would not actually see theaters.
Through the Force, but has to defend herself until Vace can reach her, which she does an admirable job of if not for Ruin taunting her about the real reason her mother left, and how her kind could never just accept their fate. He manages to catch her off guard and throws her into a wall, stunning her just long enough to pull out the amulet. I may not have the same finesse as your mother, but with enough power you can tear apart any ritual, any curse. Let me show you the truth. With that, he begins chanting, and dark energy begins to rise from Rey's body like smoke. She cries out in pain, clutching her head, writhing, and then her skin begins to crack, peeling.
This has got to be more of a Legends-ism, the chanting and stuff, the dark side rituals and stuff. From a cinema perspective, it's generally been, put your hand up, force push. Palpatine raises his hands, lightning shoots out, right? It's been very nonverbal. I think that it might be, to me, it would be something I'd be interested in, but it'd be jarring at first to adjust.
Off of her like burnt paper. The energy thickens, clouding her body, but through it we see hints of bright crimson skin, black hair instead of brown, a sharpening of the nails and canines, the pointing of ears, ridges and cartilaginous spurs along the jawline and brows. And through it all, Rey is struck by flashbacks, memories that shift and violently correct, the human version of Sulia giving way to one with red skin, black hair and orange eyes, bright, clean orange eyes like a sunset. The smoke falls away, and Rey is revealed in full, looking up with eyes the color of gleaming gold. She is Sith. Red Sith, the original Sith, not a bastardized descendant like Ruin. And her own mother performed a ritual not just to hide this from her, but to suppress both her memories and her connection to the Force, because its strength resists alerting people like Snoke to their existence. That is why they lived on the Truth Seeker, because Rey was too young to control her connection, so they left the the homeworld, and when a chance encounter with Snoke left Vace almost dead and the Red Sith's continued survival all too obvious, Sulia hid them on Jakku and fled to lead Snoke away. While she's dazed, Rey can't protect herself from Ruin's cruel kicks and taunts, but she doesn't need to as Vace finally enters the room and we get to see what it looks like when you really piss her off. She attacks in the throes of Force fury, dual-wielding her blades in reverse grip, snarling like an animal as she immediately puts Ruin on the back foot. In this moment, Vace is a flurry of motion and murderous intent, coming very close to outright killing Ruin multiple times and leaving him badly injured. Knowing he cannot best Vace in this state, Ruin relies on words instead, asking how long Vace was going to hide this from Rey if the truth would ever have come out.
How does it feel to betray your own family?
There is a brief moment where Rey, stricken, horrified, heartbroken, locks eyes with Vace, and all the fire and fury is snuffed out in an instant. In that terrible, frozen moment, Vace is a picture of grief, regret, and deep, deep shame. And those few seconds of shattered focus is all Ruin needs to run his blade through her chest. Rey screams and attacks him with a sudden explosion of yellow lightning, throwing him across the room and setting his robes alight. Already badly injured, Ruin drops smoke grenades and uses them to escape the room. He's already done what he intended to do. Vace is still and silent, and Rey is in denial at first, trying to rouse Vace as best she can, telling her she can't leave. They haven't found Sulia yet. You promised we would find her together. Why did you hide this from me? Why didn't you tell me? But there's nothing she can do now, other than pick up the empty body of her mama and find her friends so they can leave this place. Obviously, there's a bit of confusion when they see her carrying Vace, but it's cleared up quickly, and they manage to escape from Taris, deeply shaken, but with a vaccine against the Rakghoul virus in hand. The closing moments would entail Rey trying to process what just happened, sitting with Vace's body in the medbay, and eventually sitting in Sulia's study, where she discovers that the right time to open her mother's holocron was when she was herself again. She almost looks like she's going to smash the holocron at this realization, but she sits down and meditates with it instead, learning where her people live now, and that they renamed themselves the Azoran, a Sith word related to rebirth and renewal. Sulia was a member of the Gen Sarai, an order of scholarly warriors who scour the galaxy for knowledge and wisdom to better their understanding of the Force and help keep the balance within their own people. Rey explains all this to her friends after a couple of days, including that Sulia was the one who suppressed her memories in connection to the Force, and insisting that she needs to find her. She needs answers. To this, Amilyn, Finn, and Poe all agree that they will help her do this, affirming that she's not alone, and Rey finally smiles a little, joining them for a meal.
Okay, that was a lore drop. Okay, so yeah, now that's where 7 ends. I want to put that into perspective. From the Leia bit at the beginning, right? We've at this point been here for 2.5 hours, right? In this, it's only been like, in the actual video proper, it's about 2.5 minutes to about 58 minutes. That is one hell. Oh, Rakghoul. I've been saying rat, like rattling, like Rat Clan and L5R. That's my bad. I'm so sorry about that. I've been mispronouncing that this entire time. That is a very chunky episode. Yeah. I don't know if I would leave the theater feeling good about that. I think the story would be there. I think the depth would be there. But I think because I am a small-brained simpleton, I think a lot of the context would go over my head. And you know what? Full disclosure, maybe this is what the Star Wars community needs. Not the confusion part, right? But maybe the people who have been in for 40 years need to be acknowledged. They need to have their experiences validated. That rather than just hit the funny reset button, it's a good thing to pull from content that's already there. Sure, and you can maybe, you know, tweak events to your liking in the new canon, potentially. As somebody who is a very casual enjoyer of Star Wars, let's put it that way. I love it, don't get me wrong. I love Star Wars. I think that was a little thick. I also want to be fair as well, and I was going to save this till the end. I'll probably reiterate at the end of it as well. Look, anytime you put something out there, people are going to criticize it. People are going to have opinions. People are going to agree with you. People are going to disagree with you. That's just the nature of what we do. I'm sure there's plenty of people who disagree with the original artist. I'm sure there's plenty of people who agree with the original artist but disagree with my takes and commentary. And that's perfectly fine. It's as it turns out, normal to disagree with people, but to still celebrate what people do differently. This was very lore heavy. Sure, someone like me is going to feel a little lost on it, but that doesn't mean people in chat are caught up just fine, right? There are plenty of people who are going to watch this and go, this person knows what they're talking about. And if anything, like, I like seeing lore like this celebrated, right? From hearing videos on things like Star Wars and the Now, which are technically, yes, they're kind of like RPG material, right? RPG supplemental material, not necessarily canon. I like learning about things. I like hearing about things. I've always liked that. Like, I love learning about the Anvil of Blood and Legend of the Five Rings, Second Battle of Eden Pass, Second Day of Thunder, Fu Lang, Corruption of the Air Dragon to the Shadow Dragon, right? Sure, things like that. I love learning about things, and this is very information heavy. I think that for people like me, it could be incredibly too heavy. But I think there is good information here, and I want to make sure that's transparent. I think there is good information here. I think if contextualized in the right light, this has the makings for a banger series. I don't know if they're willing to do the grittiness as well, right? Like, the grittiest I think they go is like episode 3, right? I think that as a show, this would be baller. And I could totally see this. Getting into episode 8 now, Secrets of the Sith. War engulfs the galaxy. The First Order has begun a brutal campaign of conquest of a weakened New Republic. Reeling from the loss of Hosnian and unleashing the Rakghoul Plague, crew of the True Seeker find themselves relied upon by General Organa to weaken the First Order, but fears fracture the New Republic to its foundations. Many fronts buckle already. Grieving deeply shaken by the truth of her heritage, Rey searches for any sign of her mother, Sulia of Ardenox, a powerful member of the secretive Gen Sarai and personal enemy of the Emperor Kalos. Now, a new lead brings the search to the remote part of Bogano. Yeah, I think that the initial section needs to get split.
Before, these parts will be a lot shorter because I just have the spark notes of what happens in these episodes, but at least I had a through line in mind.
I think we can all respect that. A lot more forethought than not necessarily modern Star Wars, but more of a forethought than many modern stories.
I will never stop being bitter. Anyway, following the lead on Sulia, the Truth Crew are hounded by Darth Ruin and his knights as war engulfs the galaxy around them, with cuts to Captain Phasma to insinuate doubt and disloyalty are brewing. After the mission in Bogano turns out to be a wash, Leia recalls them for an important mission to Bel Savis, where a rebellion is slowly falling to the First Order. The Truth Crew leaves, and Rey searches Sulia's holocron for further insights as to her whereabouts. Through a series of gruesome struggles, they help the rebellion defeat the First Order on Bel Savis, killing a Knight of Ruin in the process. Finn and Phasma interact throughout this, sowing further seeds of doubt in her when he defeats her in single combat, but lets her live, showing his progress and the belief he still holds in his old mentor. Rose Tico joins them from the Bel Savis rebellion to help fight the First Order elsewhere, and Rey realizes that Sulia's perfect place to hide is Korriban. The Truth Crew head over there, and Korriban is a difficult place to be on all fronts. They overcome dark trials and tribulations, and eventually discover Sulia alive. She reveals that she has the axe of King Adas, a symbol of a united Sith led to victory against tyranny. She is, of course, devastated to learn that Vace died fighting Snoke's attack dog, but is deeply relieved to be reunited with Rey. They barely escape from the First Order, arriving on the planet.
So here's my big contention here. I really like recontextualizing light and dark, chaos and order, what is right, what is wrong. I like recontextualizing things like this. Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, right? Remember how Jaden, Season 3, kind of becomes the Supreme King, kind of does some not-so-good stuff, becomes traumatized because, you know, he did some not so good stuff, right? Like, funny little G word is thrown in there, right? Like, I love it. Or like even then, one season prior with with Proto Dio and Arcana Force Zawarudo, right? Actual same Japanese VA. The light of destruction is perceived as evil, where the the gentle darkness is perceived as kind of a force for good, as a force of preservation. Even like, I love stuff like that. It's so up my alley. But you have to remember that people literally struggle with like, so you a guy or you a girl? Like, people struggle with binary thinking, and I mean this in a macro sense, right? Where challenging the notions of good and evil, not relating the 2 points, right? Not relating this point with the last point, right? Challenging the notions of good and evil. And even though Star Wars literally says from a certain point of view, is so far outside of a lot of people's understanding that people will inherently just get butthurt that this is even a thing. And then you'll get people clamoring like, well, Palpatine, what he did was good. So the Empire was good, wasn't it? Not really, my guy.
Flee to the new Sith home system, presenting the axe to the High Council and everything they know about the First Order. The Azoran are, of course, reluctant to risk repeating history, but are eventually convinced, agreeing to reveal themselves and mobilize their forces with the Coalition. Unfortunately, the crew was followed. The First Order attacks, and the crew holds the line with the Azoran military until the Coalition and allies arrive to drive the First Order back. Ruin and Rey duel again, and she almost kills him if not for a knight interrupting. Rey is blinded and almost killed, causing Sulia to explode with the Force, killing the knight, surrounding troops, and gruesomely hurting Ruin. Ruin escapes with his remaining knights, and the First Order is driven off. Sulia cradles Rey in a state of shock, and the episode ends on a grim note, as we're shown the First Order turning their attention outwards to the rest of the galaxy. We'd see Ruin suffering from Sulia's attack the same way Snoke did long ago. Snoke is angry at the Sith's ability to rebuff his forces and redoubles efforts elsewhere, determined to leave them nowhere to turn but him. And Phasma, on a different, war-torn front, encounters an injured Coalition fighter trying to hide civilians. She stares at him, and his eyes remind her of Finn's, causing her to slowly close the door and ignore that she ever saw them as she moves on, flatly reporting that this sector is clear. Hold on to your tits, gang, we're nearly at the end.
So, yeah, obviously, Cliff Notes version. We do have to give credit where credit is due. At least there is a through line, right? Yeah. Even with a section that is about 3 to 4 minutes, like, yeah. I mean, at that point, it becomes, well, how do you flesh this out? I mean, reasonably, like, you know, we can use our imagination. We can extrapolate from there. At least the core is here. At least the core understanding is here. This also does play into the notion that Palpatine was... Is heretical the correct word? Palpatine is a Sith, but is not a Sith in the traditional sense. Like, he had some isms and did things that the Sith of old do not like him for. I feel like that's a plot point explored in I almost said Legacy again. Explored in Legends, which I like this. I like that as something that's being referenced. Thus, why are we allying with the Sith? You could even argue it as a enemy my enemy, right? Is my, you know, what enemy my enemy is my friend, that kind of thing. Like a not a true alliance, but one out of necessity. I kind of like that. I think that there's definitely bones here. Oh, sorry. Legacy of the Force, Wars split to the Galaxy for 3 brutal years. New Republic, so we are time skipping. New Republic is on the brink of surrender, and many core worlds already been the First Order, but the fires of rebellion continue to burn. Inspired by the leadership of General Leia Organa and the valiant efforts of the Coalition, freewields of the Galaxy have yet to give this fight. Sent on a critical mission by the general, the crew of the Truth Seeker set out to discover the terrible truth behind Emperor Kala's power and what they could do to stop it. So this is very beat for beat 8 and 9, I'd feel. Sure.
This episode would open with the Truth Crew taking out Death Troopers and making their way into an Imperial-era facility where they learn where Snoke came from, but not the source of his dark power. They're frustrated, but end up following a lead about dark gods in the unknown regions.
So at that point, this is power creep, but done in a very good way. Because Death Trooper is pretty real thing, unless you tie this into something like, I don't know, maybe the release of the Mandalorian finale, right? So being able to mow through Death Troopers definitely showcases the power tier that you're dealing with.
War is tearing through the galaxy and it's stressing out the crew, but they cut through enemy territory and find an ancient temple complex guarded by shadowy cultists. This is where they discover the existence of Abeloth and are attacked by Ruin.
Okay. You know what? I'm in. Dude, I want to know what George Lucas was thinking for the end of that Abeloth story. I am forever bitter that we're never going to get that. Oh, God, I want it. I want to know what happens.
His helmet is ripped off during this fight, revealing facial horror, but he wants more escapes. They're recalled by Leia to help an imperiled front, bringing them into contact with rebellious stormtroopers who inform them that Phasma is behind their actions and was discovered. This revelation shakes Finn, and he launches a rescue supported by the others. They recover Phasma, and she breaks ties with the First Order entirely. The rogue stormtroopers break away in droves, but the front is lost, forcing them all to retreat. They all return to Dakar to collate what they found and share intel, taking a moment to breathe and have character interactions. Dakar is then attacked by the First Order in a brutal siege that sees Ruin marching on Haven, dueling Rey until he's confronted by his mother, which nearly gets him killed, forcing him to retreat and leave his knights to fight for him. Dakar is successfully defended when joint Azoran and Republic forces come to their rescue. In the aftermath, a way to take out Abeloth is discovered and a counterattack is planned on the First Order capital world with help from Phasma.
Yo, whoa. That is easier said than done, though. Considering Abeloth was what? Like, we had, Clone Wars, mother, father... we had the mother, the daughter, and the son, right? And then we had Abeloth, who... Didn't she drink from, both both Nexuses? She's kind of this, actual, S-tier endgame level threat. I understand that we're going through Cliff Notes. That's a big hand wave to me. I feel that is a easier said than done moment. I'm into a proposed solution, but something. Oh yeah, by the way, we found how to defeat Abeloth. That one's a little corner cuttery. For me personally.
Joint forces travel, and on the way some touching scenes are had, including a sweet kiss between Poe and Finn. Shut your mouth, I don't want to hear it. The attack commences, advancing in stages until Rey, Finn, Sulia, and Leia fight their way to Snoke. Leia faces Ruin, Finn and Sulia keep the remaining knights at bay, and Rey makes it to Snoke. Their battle is fierce and almost lost, but Rey manages to kill him. She uses his connection to Abeloth to collapse the black hole prison she resides within, presumably killing her, though Rey hears a haunting laugh before the presence blinks out of existence. Nonetheless, with the deaths of Ruin, Emperor Kolost, the Knights, and the loss of their connection to Abeloth shaking the remaining Sith to their core, the First Order abandons the battle, disappearing to lick their wounds. They've won. Now, let me just elaborate a little on what everyone's development would have been at this point. Finn would have grown into a fully fledged leader within the coalition, diplomatic, tactical, and defense-focused. In this entry...
Better than what happened in the actual trilogy. If there's one person I am angry for, it's John Boyega. That man should have been, unironically, John protagonist. I am going to forever be bitter that Finn was character assassinated. That dude was just thrown off as an absolute just footnote. That is, I hate that dude. I hate that. That does not actually sit well with me by any stretch of the imagination. No, sir. I also like that. So we're gonna get through the section where I comment on Abeloth. I think that it does make sense, and I think people could have telegraphed this from early on, with the comments to she, the Dark God, etc. Right? It does make sense. I think that it was really interesting. I think for a movie trilogy, I think it's ambitious. I think Abeloth, I guess this could be considered the Abeloth trilogy, right? I think I was Palpatine pilled, this entire time. This is just going to be Palpatine. See if we're going to go the same story beat. But, if this is just an Abeloth 2.0 story, and I recontextualize the video for that, I think it does hit different chords with me. And I think that the build-up is a lot better. I think that there are still things like, yeah, just hand-waving. Like as chat's pointing out, yeah, she's an eldritch being in all senses. Drinking from both the light and the dark nexus, right? Even a full power Luke, full power Sith Lord couldn't destroy. Exactly, like that. Didn't they cast her into some lake or something like that, some force lake? And like her plot point is still like TBD. Like we don't know how that plot point would have been fulfilled. Like it's ambitious. I think it's too ambitious. I'm all for the Abeloth plot point. I think that the Yuzhong Vong would have been an excellent 789 because I know a lot of people like the Yuzhong Vong. I think that Abeloth is a little too ambitious, if that makes sense. But I like how this was written. I like that this was alluded to. And once again, I like that there is clearly a through line here.
The seeds of doubt left with Phasma would have become a rebellion for others like them who saw the good in the First Order but know they have to fight the rot within it. Poe has also grown into a leadership position within the Coalition, an authority figure to their Starfighter Corps, and he is the charismatic voice of their cause, who is set to lead the fight should Leia fall. Rose has also risen the ranks of the Coalition, but she's still a field medic at heart and is most at home on the front line. Holdo continues to work within the intelligence arm of the Coalition, spies, slicers, saboteurs, and all the dirtier work that needs to be done when fighting an enemy like the First Order. Rey has joined the Gensarai and completed her training and is now able to use Force Sight. Her goal is to end Snoke and his false Sith to ensure a place of honor in the galaxy for her people, so they no longer have to hide in shame and fear of their brutal legacy. She has a purpose, and she brings it to bear in stopping Snoke.
People would criticize the trilogy for not having a definitive ending, right? Episode 3, where we have Anakin versus Obi-Wan, and we even have the fall of democracy, Yoda versus Palpatine, and that whole thing, the duality of Yoda losing and Obi-Wan winning. Going into the rise of Vader, Palpatine and Vader constructing the dust. We had a definitive ending, right? Return of the Jedi, Anakin's redemption, the Emperor falls, quite literally, pun intended. And then, we have, cremation of Vader while party on Endor intensifies, and we have, the Force Ghost show up again, right? Realistically, I am all the Sith versus I am all the Jedi in proper episode 9, right? And then leading into the who are you, right? A very rhetorical question the movie poses, to which she says, I'm a Skywalker, right? So I think it's interesting to think that this really doesn't have an ending, because Snoke is still a threat, right? Sure, we have a variable where are they now, moment while you're rolling the credits kind of thing, right? Like, the credits are rolling on the right side, and then you see, Rose's character, maybe with some accolades and stuff on her uniform, but still, like donning a helmet and, tying a bandage on somebody, right? Things like that. Like, we have a variable who's who, where are they now? But it's like, at that point, then you call Disney shills because Lamau, you just made a trilogy to make another trilogy, right? Like, I want to see how this ends. I want to see the outro.
The last of the bastardized lords of the Sith who began with the Jedi exiles enslaving ancient Caravan. Sulia and Leia have bonded over the years, and in a final push against Snoke at his fortress in the Maw, which is the black hole prison containing Abeloth, Leia faces her son in an emotional duel where Ruin's fears are stripped of all pretense. In the end, he refuses her offer to return, believing that there is no place for someone as tainted as him in a peaceful galaxy.
Okay. Yeah, we went the complete opposite direction of Ben, which is fine. I think it's interesting. The duality between the films and stuff. I actually liked the redemption. Hated the romantic kiss, though.
How are you guys doing? Still alive? Had some water recently? Go get a snack.
Ginger ale down here. Does that count?
Or something. I hope this was at least somewhat coherent and enjoyable to listen to. The original Sith are a favorite of mine when it comes to Star Wars aliens, and it's always saddened me that by the time of the movies, they are long gone.
Yeah.
So what if they weren't? And what if they got a second chance at their own destiny as a people instead of being remembered as what dark Jedi exiles made them?
Was it Darth Bane? Was he the one that thought bombed all the Sith? And he created the rule of two? Or am I thinking of two separate ones? Which one of them literally thought bombed? Not even joking, the Sith. I'm pretty sure that was Bane. Yeah, we just blame that on Bane.
Cannot stress to you how excited I was when I stumbled across the existence of Abeloth while I was trawling Wikipedia one day, a cosmic horror entity that needs to be held in check with a cage of black holes.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I 100% need to fuck with that. There's so much potential. And of course, you'll have picked up on my distinct distaste for the completely black and white approach to the Force, where balance means just the light side, actually. And I am fully aware that that's how it's meant to be portrayed, because the dark side is a corruptive influence, but goddammit, let me cook! I just think it's neat when things that are typically seen as dark, sinister, or even evil aren't necessarily. And there would be a limit, of course, don't go too deep into the dark side, because it isn't a place that welcomes vulnerability. But that isn't because it's intentionally malicious, it just is.
Wow. You're meaning that people need to be balanced individuals. They need to not shut themselves off from their emotions, but they also need to not let their emotions pour out like an unmitigated faucet? Weird. Nah, I don't believe you.
It's entropy, rot, decay, the parasite reproducing through suffering, the wolf snatching a screaming lamb from its mother. Things we associate with darkness and evil, but simply are. Nature isn't all butterflies and daisies. Do you get what I'm trying to say? I just think it would make for more nuanced and interesting stories in this setting. Whether that turned out to be true or not is another matter. Anyways, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below for the algorithm gods. Special shout out to my supporters over on Patreon, who are all very handsome people. If you'd also like to be called a very handsome people, check out the link in the description where you can support me from just £1 a month. All tiers get their name in the credits, while members of the Nerd tier will occasionally get behind-the-scenes previews and video teasers. If you enjoy live streaming, I can be found over on Twitch, where I stream every Wednesday at 8 PM British time. For now, don't forget to drink your water, take your medication, be kind to yourselves, and I will see you all next time.
Joke's on you. I'm incapable of being kind to myself. I love this stuff. This is honestly really great. As it turns out, it was actually great to just kind of talk about Star Wars, even with chat, right? Which chat confirms that, yeah, Bane was the thought bomb person. God, I love just calling it the thought bomb. It's great. Might actually be its name, too. Like, look, I'm going to keep this as brief as I can. Everyone's going to have an opinion about Star Wars. Everyone's going to have an opinion. Everyone's going to have a, this is what they should do. Something, all new material bad. Something. Lucas lost it after the original trilogy. Prequels bad. Sequels bad. Original best. Look, tired, bro. So many of us are tired. It's not that we don't acknowledge the faults. It's that sometimes some of us just want background brain rot, and that's kind of what I use the sequel trilogy for. Once again, I get very heated over that kukri. I that is the thing I get pissed off about the most out of the entire sequel trilogy. And I think this is just people clearly wanting to enjoy Star Wars, proposing an entire rewrite that actually brings in elements like Abeloth and the Ancient Sith. How cool is that, right? It's not attacking you. It's not saying that your world is invalid. It's not, oh, but Kip, something, shut up with Finn Poe kissing. Bro, I have so many better things to do with my day. Like, the reason I have an issue with the romance plot in 9 between Rey and Ben is it felt so incredibly forced. It did not need to be there. It should have been platonic. It should have just been, friends hugging each other. Like, damn, we went through a lot, didn't we? And ultimately, I think this was a good face piece. As it turns out, people have differing opinions, and as adults, we can talk with each other. We can disagree with each other. We can agree with each other. But as long as it's being done in good faith and we're all adults about it, I think that's what a lot of people need and what a lot of people miss. And there's definitely things that I didn't know going into this. The city mentioned at the end of 7, no idea what that was until somebody said, it's like the Coruscant of the mid-rim. And it's like, that's cool. Yeah, I never knew about it until literally this video. Like, use it as an opportunity to build each other up and have those discussions, to celebrate why we love things, to celebrate why we're fans, to celebrate why this means so much to us. If you know what every single kyber crystal means, is its name, where it comes from, and what it symbolizes, more power to you, right? If you've only watched episode 1, 2, 3, and you're kind of scared to go into 4, 5, 6, maybe because they're dated, or maybe because, I don't know, take the plunge. if you've been curious about the sequel trilogy and you want to go into it from a strict standpoint of wanting to criticize it, sure, I'm not going to stop you. But I want to point to this video specifically because I've had to have the Star Wars argument many, 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 many times. And at the end of the day, it's fine to have your own opinion. It's fine to disagree. It's fine to feel hurt and betrayed. Don't lose sight of why the series is important. I like the prequel trilogy. Many people will disagree with me on that. Some vehemently will disagree with me on that. And that's fine. I find value in it. I find enjoyment in it. As clearly, this author finds enjoyment out of the ancient Sith. What are the Asurai? I can't remember what they're called offhand. I'm so sorry. The old Sith, right? These guys. My model's covering it, of course it is, right? Like, there's cool lore bits that I don't know about, and I'm going to get to stumble across one day. I probably stumble across it in a video, but especially in an era where every single Star Wars video is just tearing into Disney, tearing into the franchise, attacking fans of the prequel trilogy. Just, dude, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. Just sure, fight it out. I want to enjoy the things. And even then, I can have good faith discussions around the sequel trilogy, things that does well, things that doesn't do so well. And I think that's also part of being a balanced individual. Who would have thought Star Wars would be a story about being a balanced individual? Definitely not me. And as I said, look, I have my criticisms, I have my critiques, I have my things that I feel that, I personally would enjoy. I don't think others would enjoy about this. I'm sure there are plenty of other people who would enjoy a rewrite like this. Make sure you're being fair. Make sure that you're being respectful, right? Because anytime you put out work, especially a piece like this, it's going to garner controversy. It's going to garner back and forth. It's going to garner criticism, whether it's good faith or bad faith. And we need to make sure we're being adults about this. So, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Khanlusa, for an excellent video. I think it was really great to hear a proposed rewrite using a lot more expanded Legends materials. I thought it was really interesting to see someone else talk about Abeloth, especially in recent memory, other than some couple Star Wars channels that kind of go through their content again. Kind of like how people go through cycles where they'll talk about different Tolkien things over and over and over again, like their 6th video on the Balrog or something like that. So it was kind of interesting to hear a different perspective. It was kind of interesting to learn new things, and to kind of really sink my teeth into it, and kind of tread the waters between several different things here. And at the end of the day, all I can say is be respectful and come to your own conclusion. Thank y'all for watching.